So welcome friends, how are you today? We are gonna see what if Naruto was mastered the Yokai Academy, Naruto x Moka A movie. The blonde glared down at the floor, pissed at the way things turned out. He clenched his fists and his jaw before asking, why? This is the way it is, Naruto, Tsunade said as a tear fell down her cheek. You lost control at Four Tails and killed Sasuke as well as taking his Sharingan for yourself. I wasn't aware of what I was doing. He tried to defend himself. His defense only seemed to make the motherly cage even more depressed. She had tried that defense multiple times and only a few would actually stick their necks out for the blonde after hearing her defense. Turning away to hide her emotions, she was quickly losing control of. Tsunade spoke again. Regardless, the council has reached a verdict that I cannot overrule. I am so sorry. Naruto remained silent as he listened to his bond to cry softly before leaving the room without another word in a shunshin. He left the next day, not even saying goodbye to anyone he knew. It'd be too hard for him to face his teammate after nearly killing her. He couldn't finalize his promise and he lost control. Again, it always happened when he went to Four Tails. His perverted sensei Jiraiya could atone to that. If he had to leave the village to protect it, then it was his duty as a shinobi of Konoha to do so. End flashback. Naruto dropped his hand and put it back into his black jeans pocket. He was being sent to another dimension where, hopefully, the Akatsuki couldn't reach him and where he would be able to learn control over his Biju chakra. He knew he was going to a school for monsters, not that it bothered him. He, for lack of a better definition, was a monster as well. Naruto looked over at his black and silver Konoha-marked duffel bag that held his belongings. His sensei, Yamato, had packed several of his old clothes. Much to the blonde's dismay, and he was dressed in lax shinobi slacks and a mesh long-sleeved shirt underneath a white t-shirt that had an orange swirl on the front. On his feet were modified black sandals with black tap wrapped over his feet. He was informed he would have to wear a school uniform, but when it was brought before him, he incinerated it with a small Kaden technique. He knew he would talk about the uniform issue when he met with the headmaster or whoever he was. Suddenly he was slammed against the back of the seat in front of him as the bus came to a stop. After growling at the pain his nose was going through, Naruto snapped his head up when the glowing-eyed bus driver spoke after taking a puff on his cigar. Last stop, Yokai Academy. Just be sure to watch yourself, punk. Bite me, fat ass, Naruto grumbled as he swung his duffel over his shoulder and got off the bus. The bus driver laughed before shutting the doors behind him. After that, the bus went off in a hurry, leaving Naruto coughing on the exhaust. Glaring in the direction the bus had left, Naruto barely noticed someone approaching from the right. Look out! A girl called. Naruto turned and was suddenly bowled over by a rush of weight. His head connected with the ground and he yelped in pain. When he looked up, he saw a girl with long pink hair, longer than Sakura's when they were younger, and emerald eyes looking back at him with worry. She was dressed in a plaid skirt and white blouse along with the horrid green blazer he recognized over her shirt. Around the girl's neck was a weird necklace, but he was more concerned of her position. Her hands were on his chest and she was straddling him. Her dress was parted enough to reveal her undergarments to him. Naruto started in an oh-so-smart way as he stared at her panties while trying to complete a thought. The poor 15-year-old couldn't manage anything other than a dumbstruck look. He was snapped out of it when the girl spoke. I am so sorry, she exclaimed, standing and offering a hand to help him up. Naruto gladly took it and stood, rubbing his sore head and wincing when he felt a small patch of liquid under his fingers. She continued her apology. I am anemic and I get dizzy easily. I am sorry I ran into you. Really, it's all right, he replied as he rubbed his head over the wound, relaxing as it started to heal before he brought his hand back to examine it. Sure enough, ruby red liquid clung to two of his fingers. What surprised him was the girl now had her attention locked on the red-coated fingers. Oh, no, you're bleeding. I am so sorry, she replied as she started to lean onto him. His eyes widened when her head drifted toward his. Holy shit. Is she going to kiss me? I am not ready for this, damn it. I knew I should have brushed my teeth twice this morning, the blonde thought. Naruto was shocked again when her head drifted downwards and he felt something pierce his skin. His eyes were now the size of dinner plates as he felt her start draining him of his blood. Akashi Moka was ecstatic as she drank from this person. This boy, she was sure he was human from his blood. Its taste was to die for and it was addictive, even from the first taste she could tell. There was another hint to it, one Moka's senses couldn't determine. It made her heart beat faster in excitement as she took a drink from the boy. When she had landed on him, she could feel lithe toned muscles underneath the clothes, which only continued to excite her as she thought about them. But the strange eyes he had, blue with three comma-like tomos swirling around his pupil, were what really intrigued her. When her thirst was sated, Moka released the blonde as he clutched his neck and stared at her with fear and confusion. Moka looked at her feet and spoke softly. I am sorry I did that. but I am a vampire. He blinked a few times before sighing and shaking his head. She barely caught the mutter of, I should have known, before he looked up at her with forgiveness in his eyes. It's cool, he replied with a small smile before holding his hand out. Uzumaki Naruto. I can guess from your attire that you are also attending Yokai Academy? Hi, she replied as she took his hand in the handshake. I am Akashi Moka. Pleasure to make your acquaintance, Naruto-kun. Same here, Moka-chan. Naruto replied as he smiled when they pulled their hands back. He looked down at her bike and saw it was bent irregularly at the handles in front of it. Picking it up easily, he put it over his shoulder before kneeling down and picking up his duffel, throwing it over the other. You don't have to do that, Moka said with a slight blush. Naruto gave her his signature foxy grin. I think I do, considering it probably wouldn't have bent like this if it ran into anyone else, he replied, not noticing her blush. Wanna walk with me to the school? Moka looked over his clothes once more before looking at him with confusion. You're going to attend the academy as well? Yay. Naruto replied with a nod as they started walking through the dead woods towards the school. I guess you'd be thrown by my clothes, huh? Back home, I was the same way. Heck, I used to run around in brighter attire than this, but my sensei decided it'd be better if I didn't bring it here. Didn't want me to bring attention to myself or something, which is weird cause I am going to a school with a bunch of monsters, but in short, you won't catch me in the school's clothes cause 1. They look stupid, not on you of course, but on me they would, and 2. I've been a rebel all my life, fighting everything someone ordered me to do unless I was on a mission. Moka's eyes widened at his explanation and her curiosity concerning the blonde next to her grew, especially that comment about a mission. When they arrived at the official entrance for Yokai Academy, the vampire's eyes widened while the blonde simply scoffed and looked around. She loved that it looked like a haunted cathedral, as though it was made specifically for the monsters that would attend. Naruto was less impressed, thinking that the scariest building alive would forever be the Konohagakure Hospital. He shuddered at the memories of waking up to intense pain from the fourth-tailed form only a few days ago. He set Moka's bike down and looked at her, chuckling at her amazed gawk at the building. He tapped her shoulder, earning the gorgeous Pinkette's attention and smiled at her foxily again. I gotta go talk to the headmaster or something, he said with a shrug before grinning at the girl. Catch ya around sometime, Moka-chan, it was nice meeting you. He started walking away and waved over his shoulder after Moka called out the same as she headed for the building that she had been assigned to for dorms. Wheeling her damaged bike as she walked, her mind occasionally drifting towards the spiky-haired blonde with the strange eyes and tasty blood. She could only wonder what type of monster he was and hoped he wouldn't do anything to risk his enrollment. Meanwhile, Naruto found himself whisked away by a bright green light and now stood before a robed man with glowing eyes that were eerily familiar to him. The headmaster sat in a large chair and his eyes crinkled with amusement as a small smile appeared on his face. So you are Jiraiya-san's godson, he asked. Naruto nodded. The headmaster nodded as well before speaking again with slight annoyance in his voice. Where is your uniform? Naruto scowled and dropped his bag at his right. I am not going to wear that pathetic excuse for clothing even if you pay me. The headmaster chuckled before looking at the blonde once again. You remind me of a young kitsune that had 3 tails a long time ago. He was the same way. I will allow your insubordinate ways. For now, just watch yourself as I have made several powerful people promises concerning your continued existence here. To Naruto, it sounded as though the headmaster was saying his life was at risk here despite the promise to safety and in all actuality. It made the academy life sound more exciting to him. He was worried about seeing less action, not being able to fight or prank like he did before. All those concerns were chucked out the window, just as a green blazer was chucked at his face. The blonde scowled as he took the blazer off his face and was prepared to throw it back when the headmaster spoke. You have to wear that at least, Uzumaki-san, he said, smiling wider as the blonde's scowl deepened. Feel free to modify it however you want. I will inform the teachers to this in the staff meeting later today. Have a good first day, Uzumaki-san. Naruto felt the strange sensation of being teleported away again and stumbled before leaning against the wall of a hallway to catch himself. His bag was no longer at his side and the damned green blazer was now resting in his hands. Naruto held it up and examined it before noticing a white slip of paper in the front pocket, pulling it out and unfolding it. Class schedule, EH. Oh, and my dorm room as well, Naruto thought as he looked around for a classroom label. Searching for his homeroom, he looked up to his right to see the exact one he was looking for and chuckled before shoving the paper in his pocket. He tore the sleeves off his blazer before pulling the newly made vest on and walking into the classroom. The teacher, who he noticed had cat-like ears and tail along with the other disguised students, all looked at him. Scratching the back of his head and grinning nervously, Naruto said, Nekonomiya-sensei's class? The cat woman, Nekonomiya Shizuka, nodded and frowned at him. I am Nekonomiya-sensei and I am wondering why you aren't in proper school uniform, mister. Oh, Gomen, the blonde said quickly as he bowed in an apologetic manner. Uzumaki Naruto. Sensei. The headmaster will explain my lax dress code later, Gomen, but that's all I can say about it. The teacher just smiled at him and nodded. Please take your seat, Uzumaki-kun. Naruto looked over the class, most guys now ignoring him and staring at the far right while the girls of the classroom all had their eyes locked on him. His curiosity coming over him, Naruto followed the boys' gazes before smiling as the pink-haired girl gave him a large grin. Naruto-kun, she said happily as he walked to the desk on her left and plopped down in it. Most of their male classmates glared at him while the females glared at her. The pinkette kept her smile up, completely happy she wasn't alone in their homeroom. The blonde next to her smiled back before leaning back in his chair, resting an arm over the back of his chair as Nekonomi's-sensei continued her own greeting to the school. When class let out, the two friends walked out together, Moka carrying her book over her chest while Naruto had sealed his away in his right arm. The sealing only perplexed the vampire even more, and when she asked about it, Naruto only waved her off with a smile and a simple answer of, "It's complicated." They were talking quietly about their homeroom teacher when they were suddenly stopped in the middle of a hallway by a boy with long blonde hair and piercings marking his face. He smiled at Moka while his eyes showed nothing but perverse intentions, making Naruto scowl. "Why hello there," the boy said, his eyes going over Moka's form. "You must be the most beautiful girl in the school. Akashi Moka. My name's Komiya Saizo, and it should do you well to remember it." Hello, Moka said before gesturing to Naruto. "This is my friend, Naru." "Forget him," Saizo said, moving to push Naruto back. Imagine his surprise when the shorter blonde wrapped his wrist in a bone-crushing grip and the tomos in his eyes spun angrily. Saizo tried to pull his hand back, only for Naruto to increase his hold and twisted his arm, electing a crack and making Saizo yell in pain as well as fall to his knees. A small crowd was around the three, boys whispering to their friends about rumors revolving around Saizo and girls staring at the spiky whiskered blonde, want and desire in their eyes. "You better know your role, Baka," Naruto growled as he crushed the wrist even more. "If I even suspect you doing what danced across your eyes a few moments ago to any girl, especially Moka-chan, it'll make you pray to Kami above that you never even knew the reproductive dance." Several boys gasped as a louder crack came from Saizo's arm and the boy yelled a profanity at the whiskered blonde, only managing to piss said blonde off enough to kick him square in the jaw with his heel. Saizo fell back, pulling his arm close to his body and holding his mouth, blood seeping between his fingers. Naruto looked at the crowd and his eyes spun. "That goes for the rest of you horny fuckers," he snarled, before turning once again and kicking the downed boy in the groin, making the crowd gasp when Saizo released a shrill cry. He grabbed Moka's arm gently and led her away from the scene, leaving behind several groups of gossiping girls and concerned hormonal boys that unconsciously covered themselves. When they were far enough away, Moka turned to Naruto and asked quietly, "Why did you do that?" "You probably didn't recognize the look in his eyes," the blonde replied as he released her and slowed his pace as they walked outside of the school. They were only required to go to their homerooms today for proper introductions, so now the two were on their way to their dorm apartment. They shared the same one, which was another pleasant shock for the vampire and shinobi. Naruto put his hands in his pockets as he continued, "Growing up with multiple perverted teachers and role models, I know that gleam better than anyone else. Hell, occasionally I have that gleam, but not since. It's not important. What is important is that Baka, along with the other boys in the school, learn their roles in life." "But you didn't have to do that to him," Moka said. "You could risk getting in trouble." "Been getting in trouble all my life, Moka-chan," the blonde replied with a grin. "Plus, it's not like I am here 'cause I chose to be." "What do you mean?" Moka asked as he opened their dorm door for her. She nodded her head in thanks as she walked past him inside before waiting for him. He followed her inside and they continued walking together towards the stairwell. "Well, it's complicated," Naruto said as he rubbed the back of his head, "and it's probably best if I don't involve you. Don't get me wrong, I bet you're strong enough to defend yourself, but this is personal." "Oh, okay," Moka replied, a little dejected. She wished he would open up more to her, and she also wished she could determine what type of monster he was. It was infuriating to the girl that no matter what she thought of, another feature belonging to the blonde would cancel out her ideas, mostly his eyes or whisker marks on his cheeks. They walked up the stairs in a comfortable silence. On Naruto's part anyway, before Moka's stomach rumbled. The vampire blushed in embarrassment while Naruto looked at her with wide eyes before he snickered, making the poor pinkette blush even more. The blonde took her hand in his and pulled her towards his assigned room, opening the door easily. Naruto ushered the vampire inside before double-checking the hall and shutting the door. The blonde turned back to the very confused vampire and tilted his head, exposing his neck to her. "Take a drink, Moka-chan," he said with a smile, her eyes widening. "I can take it and I can tell you need it. An old sensei of mine said my blood was addictive, at least now I know she was right. Moka hesitated before coming closer to the blonde, again hesitantly. Moka leaned forward before pressing her fangs into the blonde's vein. Naruto tensed for a second before relaxing, feeling a slight high and arousal come to him from getting sucked off, pun intended. The vampire softly moaned as his blood flowed into her system. It was like a sinful delicacy, it was so tasty. Before either of them knew what was happening, her arms were around his shoulders, hugging him closer to him as he held her hips in place and occasionally hummed while she fed off his blood. Right as Naruto was starting to feel woozy, Moka backed off a few steps after gathering some residue blood from his neck and sucking it off her finger. Naruto quickly tilted his neck to the other side, cracking it loudly before he groaned and rubbed his now healing bite mark. The vampire smiled at him, which he saw through one eye as the other was closed, a reaction to the pain of regenerating the tissue that Moka's fangs had destroyed through their piercing. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," Moka said in a grateful manner. "I don't know why, but your blood is so tasty." "I know," the blonde groaned before he rolled his neck around once, seeming to feel better. The whiskered blonde gave her a foxy grin. "Feel free to feed whenever. I tend to recreate blood cells faster than anyone I know." Later that night, the two were examining the surrounding school grounds. They were still walking and talking, getting to know one another better when Moka finally groaned out of frustration. "Something wrong, Moka-chan?" Naruto asked, stopping and looking at her in a concerned manner. Moka shook her head and looked at him once again before she sighed. "I am sorry, I am just so frustrated," she said, crossing her arms and pouting. "I've been trying all day to figure out what type of monster you are. You can't be a werewolf, because your blood doesn't taste like poison. Can't be an orc, cyclops, or troll because you would have dirt in your bloodstream. I know you aren't a mermaid or any other aquatic monster because I would feel sick. You can't even tell me because it's against the rules. I give up." To her surprise, Naruto simply stared at her before chuckling and putting both hands behind his head in a relaxed manner. He gave her another foxy grin, the same one that sped her heart up and made her feel completely at ease. "That's because I am not any of those or any other for that matter," he said. "I am more like a hybrid, I guess." "You guess?" Moka repeated. Naruto nodded. "Yeah," he replied. "You could say I am a Kitsune Hanyu, but that's about it." Before Moka could ask more about his heritage, a familiar voice spoke up. "Finally, I found you." Saizo, now complete with a sling for his right arm and a few front teeth missing from his mouth, hopped out from the tree line, his eyes locked on Naruto before he looked past his target towards the girl with him. A perverted grin appeared on his face. "Moka-chan is here too?" "Perfect," the boy said. "After I kick your ass, Uzumaki, I'll take Moka-chan as my own." Said blonde growled and his tomos spun slowly before his eyes widened to the size of dinner plates when Saizo's skin stretched and his muscles grew. A flashback to fighting Sasuke at the Valley of the End came to the blonde's mind and he swallowed heavily. That outcome was not fun. When Saizo finished, he stood at a whopping 7 feet with gray skin and torn clothes. He smirked down at the frightened-looking blonde before leering at the pinkette behind him. "Don't be afraid, Moka-chan," Saizo said in a deeper voice. "Once I kick this asshole's ass from here to the moon, you and I can have all the fun we want." Saizo collapsed to his knees, cradling his once again damaged goods, and tears threatened to fall from his glowing eyes. The orc looked up to see the spiky blonde glaring down at him with a fist cocked back, and his tomos were spinning rapidly, making Saizo suddenly tired. "I warned you, Baka," Naruto snarled before delivering a bone-shattering punch to the orc's nose. Saizo recoiled in pain and covered his nose with his non-injured hand. To retaliate, he surprised the boy by punching him solidly in the stomach with his injured arm. In actuality, it had healed when he transformed, and now he could use it freely to, knock a certain blonde about 15 feet away. "Naruto-kun!" Moka cried out, rushing to the blonde that had lost all the wind in the punch. Naruto coughed as he sat up when Moka knelt to his side. Dazed, the blonde muttered, "Hold the soy sauce on that ramen, Tuchi-jiji." "Moka-chan, come to daddy," Saizo said with a lecherous grin as he started to walk towards them. Naruto, still slightly dazed because he is only used to getting hit in the head, grabbed the rosary around Moka's neck before falling back to the ground in a coughing fit. The rosary snapped off in his grip and a large source of yokai swirled around the pinkette, making the blonde and the orc cover their eyes. The yokai engulfed Moka before a bright flash erupted, and next to Naruto stood a now silver-haired girl, more curved hips and fuller breasts. Her eyes opened and she looked at the blonde. Naruto knew those eyes, slitted and blood-red, as though glaring into your soul. The spiky-haired blonde swallowed in slight fear before she looked back at the orc that was hesitatingly taking a few steps back. "Ah, what's wrong?" The new Moka asked him, slowly standing and crossing her arms. Don't want to play anymore. AV vampire. You're a vampire? Saizo asked with fear on his face. Moka nodded before taking a step closer to him. Saizo looked her over once again before a lecherous look came over him again and he grinned. So what? I'll just make sure you're not too beaten up. Saizo rushed her and brought his fists back before she faded from his sight. He looked around for her, only to be shocked when someone tapped his shoulder and he turned to see Moka with her fist pulled back. I'd like to see you try when your jaw is knocked off. Do not touch me, weakling. Know your place, Moka said coolly before she drove her fist up into his jaw, easily fracturing it. Saizo stumbled back and cupped his mouth when his left arm was grabbed and he was turned around. Standing in front of him was a grinning red-eyed blonde with black eyes and a blue pupil that reminded him of an atom's shape. Naruto grabbed his shoulders and kneed him in the groin roughly once again, making the orc fall to his knees as his hands went to cup his precious tool and ask Kami why the blonde constantly targeted his boys. The spiky-haired blonde then grabbed both of the orc's ears, forcing him to look him in the eyes. Tsukuyomi, Naruto snarled, a grin plastered on his face. When he first woke with the eternal Sharingan, he sobbed long and hard, long enough to pass out from exhaustion and talk to the Kyuubi about his abilities. Considering the demon lord created them, he learned them the day before his enrollment. Saizo found himself in a world that had a dark blue sky and black ground. He looked around to find the bane of his current existence standing before him with a blade in hand. Welcome to my world, Baka, Naruto said, running his finger along the edge of his wakizashi. I am nowhere near as strong as my friend's brother was in this world. I can only slow time for one day. Now currently, you have 24 hours before you go back to reality. Naruto then suddenly shoved his blade into Saizo's stomach, making the orc gasp in pain as the blonde started twisting the blade around before pulling it out. He did this 7 more times, each time he twisted it slower and slower, before he finally stopped and took a step back. Saizo opened his eyes after the feeling of dying passed. Well, that wasn't so bad, Naruto started, further confusing the orc. Now you only have 59 seconds, 59 minutes, and 23 hours left. Saizo screamed as Naruto slowly started to slice him into itty-bitty pieces, continuing his destruction of the orc's mind. A few moments later in the real world, the orc collapsed on his back and blood leaked from his ears and nose along with a green substance mixed in with it. The silver-haired Moka looked down at the orc with wide eyes, the only thing showing her shock. She looked over at the blonde questionably to see him rubbing his eyes furiously and growling. Then an amazing aroma hit her. It was familiar to her because of her other half. She walked over to the blonde's side, standing only a few inches taller than him. A few moments later, he looked up at her, dried blood the only residue around his tomoed eyes, grabbing his head and forcing him to tilt it on the left before she bit into his neck. She drank the heavenly substance, savoring each taste that flowed into her mouth. When Moka broke away, she wiped her thumb over her bottom lip before sucking on it in a sensual manner. The blonde in front of her just rubbed the spot where she bit him and blinked in confusion. What, Moka-chan? He asked, now dazed and slightly aroused from the bite. Moka nodded and knelt down to pick up the rosary that was on the ground. My other self will explain it to you later, Uzumaki, Moka said before wiping her thumb under his eye and sucking the residue blood off again. AB positive. Naruto nodded and Moka's mouth turned into a ghost of a smile before placing the rosary around her neck and her features returned to the way they were before. The pink-haired vampire blinked and her eyes returned to the normal green ones they were. She stumbled a moment before Naruto caught her and looked at her while she passed out. Sighing, he swept his arm underneath her legs and carried the vampire towards the hospital, which had already found via cage bunshin. Next morning, Yokai Academy Infirmary. Moka woke up in a white room in a firm bed. She blinked a few times before looking around. A blonde woman dressed in a school nurse's attire walked in through the door on the right and smiled at her. Oh, good morning Akashi-san. The nurse said in a chipper tone. You look like you've completely recovered. I am sure your little friend Uzumaki-san will be relieved to hear this. You Uzumaki-san? Moka repeated with a dazed tone in her voice. Realization struck her and she clarified, Naruto-kun? The nurse nodded and continued to smile. Ah, it was so sweet. He seemed so worried when he carried you inside, asking questions about your condition, whether you'd be okay or not. Sigh, if only I managed to find love like that at your age. Moka's eyes shot open, but before she could correct the nurse, said nurse had ducked back outside to get her release papers approved. Her mind spinning, Moka sat back and rubbed her temples in an effort to relax when someone spoke. Nurse-san said you were feeling better? Moka's head snapped over to her right to see Naruto standing halfway through the door. She smiled at him and nodded. The whiskered blonde grinned before he walked into the room fully and took a seat on her right. His hands were resting on the arm of the chair he sat in and a silence filled the room. Moka glanced at him before looking down at her hands in her lap. "You're wondering about last night, aren't you?" Moka asked quietly, her bangs covering her eyes as her head tilted down. Naruto paused before sighing and nodding his head. Tears dropped down onto her sheet and the blonde's concern grew for his new pink-haired friend. I understand if you hate me now," she said softly around her tears. "The other me, the one you saw last night, she's dangerous." "Yeah, I kind of gathered that," Naruto replied with a chuckle as he rubbed his neck. Moka shook her head. "No, why you don't understand?" The pinkette yelled in a hushed tone. She is my true self. My true vampire side. She'll drink anything, drain anyone, she doesn't care, she's the real me, and I am. Seeing the poor girl start to become hysteric, Naruto stood from his seat and moved onto the bed. Wrapping a comforting arm around her, being teamed with a girl much like the one next to him, if only in looks alone, helped a little bit with knowing how to comfort girls on off days, like when he woke up in the hospital for the second time and Sakura walked in, bawling about how worried she was about him, not about how he killed Sasuke, but him. She was scared for him, which was insanely better than being scared of him. Moka buried her face in Naruto's shoulder as she cried her shame out. The Moka he was currently comforting was so sure she was a false identity. She clung to the whiskered blonde and she sobbed into his shoulder. Unknown to the both of them, the nurse was watching the whole thing, recording it with her cell phone. It was very touching to her, seeing as she was still single at the reasonable single age of 25, and she was a hopeless romantic. Naruto softly brushed the vampire's hair as she made his shoulder very damp from her sobbing. When she started to quiet down, Naruto tried to cheer her up as he righted her on the bed. Hey, it's okay. Moka-chan. No matter which of you is out and about, I'll still be your friend." Really?" Moka asked as she wiped at her tears. The Tomoed blue-eyed teen gave her his signature smile. "Believe it," he said. A shudder traveled through him and he suddenly looked around the room before shrugging and looking back at her with his grin back on his face. Moka smiled back at him while she wiped her tears away. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said with a small smile. The blonde grinned even wider when her stomach rumbled and her face turned a nice shade of pink. He tilted his head and offered her a meal, which she gladly accepted. The moment was dead to the witness and her phone as the vampire bit into his neck. Sure, watching a romantic scene was one thing, but her duty on the scholastic payroll came before her own hopes in romance. Moka jumped away from Naruto's neck when the nurse burst in and yelled, "No sex in the infirmary." The two turned a bright cherry red at that remark. The two later found themselves in their homeroom, tears dried and their blushes long gone, as well as the damp shirt on the blue-eyed blonde being replaced with a spare black replica with the same orange insignia dead centered in the chest. "Class," Nekonomiya started with a small sad smile. "I am sorry to say that one of our classmates was found half dead out by the school's forest. He might not be able to return this year at all." Naruto glanced over at Moka, who seemed relieved that the orc was alive. He didn't tell her that he mentally destroyed him or how he did it, allowing her to think her true self beat the shit out of him. Sure, it was wrong to do, but he'd rather have her believe a lie than bring her any further into his life. It was just too dangerous right now. The blonde locked eyes with her out of his corner while she smiled, unaware of the glares both were being sent by the rest of the class. Nekonomiya continued, either unaware of the intense plotting going on through a greater part of her class or ignoring it. "Well, I want you all to send him your concerns and best wishes for his health. Now, on to the lesson." Naruto's day was going fairly well as he stood upside down on a tree branch and practiced eating his ramen against gravity. His sleeveless blazer dangled on the branch along with his necklace. He thought over his homework assignments so far. Nekonomiya-sensei had him writing a personal explanation about his species. Even if he was the first of his kind, he still knew jack shit about Kitsune history. He figured he'd deal with that later and moved on to the next assignment, calculus. Despite his lower intellect, he was actually quite proficient in math and science, had to be in order to keep his pranking tools and shinobi supplies at top notch. After that he had gym. His sensei was a weird one, but he figured he would get used to it. Finishing his bowl of instant miso ramen, Naruto bent upwards to grab his necklace and blazer vest before jumping down from his anti-gravity perch. After tossing his lunch in the trash, Naruto stretched and realigned his back, popping it loudly and groaning in relief. Moka was still in her art class she had taken up, so Naruto now had a whole hour before they reunited for the official lunch break. At the moment, he had a study hall, but skipped for a simple reason. He didn't see the need to study. For now, he focused on walking aimlessly through the grounds. A tune entered the blonde's head again as his tomos spun slowly, as though they were the source. Naruto groaned as he struggled for an idea of something to do. "Help, please, help," a feminine voice called out. Naruto turned his head in its direction before rushing towards the source. When he finally found the injured girl, He knelt at her side and checked her over. She had short cyan blue hair held together by a band of some sort and purple eyes. She was dressed in a yellow sweater vest over a white short-sleeved shirt and the school-required skirt. What would draw most males' attention would be her breasts. They were easily borderline D-cups, something that took him longer to move his eyes away from. "You okay?" he asked after finishing his own examination. The girl looked up at him with an almost sheepish smile. "I am so sorry about this," she said, pushing off the ground before falling back down with a grunt. Naruto quickly and carefully rolled her onto her back and slipped his arms under her shoulders and knees before he stood and carried her towards the nurse's office. He paused mid-step when she wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder. "Do I get to know the name of my savior?" she asked innocently while batting her eyes. The sensation of a beginning genjutsu started to cloud his mind and his tomos started to swirl slowly, dispersing the feeling. "Naruto," the blonde replied as he continued his walk. "Uzumaki Naruto, and you are?" "Kuron Kurumu," she replied with a smile. "I am sorry about this again, it's just, these silly things keep causing me back problems because of their size. The odd thing is, they're so soft that sometimes I forget they have any weight to them." To emphasize this, she turned in his arms and pulled his head into her bust. Not prepared for this action, Naruto couldn't help but fall forward and flip onto his back subconsciously to keep her safe. Kurumu giggled as Naruto flailed his arms before she released the hold on his head. Now free from the marshmallow soft cushion-like prison, Naruto took in several gasps for air before looking back into the eyes of the cyan blue-haired girl. The genjutsu feeling returned and Naruto tried to dispel it. "Now, Naruto-kun," Kurumu said softly in a hypnotic manner, "you will be mine, right?" Why, you're out of your mind," Naruto shouted before using Kawamari to get out from under the girl's hold. Kurumu yelped when she found herself now sitting on a blanket. The drop to the ground shocked her and she looked up with a glare at the blonde. "What was that for?" she yelled at him. Naruto pointed an accusing finger at her. "You tried to hypnotize me. That was self-defense in the lightest definition," he said to her before turning away and stalking off. "And you can forget about me helping you. Try and be nice to a pretty girl and this is what happens." Kurumu's eyes narrowed and she ground her teeth as she watched the boy walk away while he complained to no one in particular. "You will be mine, Uzumaki Naruto," she thought in a determined manner. "No one refuses me. No one." Naruto sneezed and rubbed his nose before looking back in the direction he had left the blue-haired girl. Shrugging the feeling off, Naruto continued to walk, his Shodai necklace still around his neck and his blazer vest on his person and his hands in his pockets. Currently, he was thinking about one of the things he heard a fellow student talk about. Student police committee. What kind of school needed a police force that did jack shit for its students? Hell, he had almost killed poor Saizo more than once on his first day. Where were they then? This was something worth looking into. Unfortunately, his detective work would be cast aside as a certain pinkette latched onto him from behind and bit into his neck. Naruto chuckled, disturbing Moka as she fed and thus causing her to lightly smack his chest. This, however, only furthered to fuel his humor at the situation. When she finished feeding, Moka walked around and smiled at her friend. "Geez. Lunch is only 15 minutes away, Moka-chan," Naruto said as he rubbed his neck and smiled at her. "I think you took more than last time." "Did not?" Moka denied while wiping some residue blood off the bottom of her lip with her finger and sucking it off, after she finished molesting her finger orally and unknowingly teasing the blonde. Moka turned to her friend and pouted. "Why don't you join my art class, Naruto-kun? It's fun." Naruto chuckled and interlocked his fingers behind his head. "No reason for me to join, Moka-chan, aside from it being another class with you." "Ah, please?" Moka asked, holding both of her hands in front of her and giving him the same look of a sad puppy. Naruto mentally scowled while externally he sighed. All right, fine," he replied in a defeated tone before crossing his arms and pouting childishly. "I'll join the stupid art class." "Yay!" Moka cheered as she glomped onto him, making a good portion of the male population glare at the whiskered blonde. Naruto chuckled and hugged her back, relieved he was free of the damned puppy eye look Moka gave to him. When he was released, the two continued walking towards the picnic tables outside. Naruto sat on one side with Moka right across from him and pulled a scroll out of his pocket before unrolling it. Biting down on his thumb to draw blood, he allowed one drip to fall onto the kanji for miso, and in a poof of smoke, there was a large bowl of ramen sitting before him. Moka was wide-eyed and turned to her friend before asking, "How did you do that?" "Magic. Chakra," he corrected with a grin as he lifted the bowl of ramen before rolling the scroll up and storing it away in a back pocket. He then set his bowl back down and began to eat slowly. Manners were beaten into him via Sakura just before the mission that changed his life, so he now ate less and savored more, finding himself full on 1/4 of the usual amount of ramen he ate. "What's chakra?" Moka asked innocently as Naruto ate. Naruto paused in his meal and looked up at her, slurping the noodles still hanging from his mouth quickly and quietly so as not to be rude. Naruto set his chopsticks to the side and looked at her. You really don't know what chakra is? Even though monsters use yokai? He asked with an arched brow. Moka nodded vigorously and Naruto shook his head, smile still on his face. That's just wrong, he said softly. Back in my village, everyone who learned to use chakra learned about yokai. Well, to avoid it anyway. Why avoid it? Moka asked with a small tilt of her head. Naruto chuckled and picked his chopsticks up once again before he slowly began to eat his meal. It's deadly to humans, he replied before he took a bite of his food. After swallowing he continued, and I was the only one in the village capable of using yokai. Well, before a certain snake Teme started doing experiments on children. Moka's gasp was soft and she asked, why you live with humans? Naruto laughed before taking another bite of his food. Yeah, been raised by the leader of my village and my favorite restaurant's employees, all human, but I turned out great. I have no desire to kill or harm any of them, despite a small few who have radical beliefs. Moka became very quiet and Naruto ate in peace before she spoke softly again. I don't like humans. Pausing in mid-bite once again, the whiskered blonde slurped the last of his noodles into his mouth before setting the chopsticks back on his bowl, holding his hands up in a strange position so that 2 fingers on each hand formed a cross. A poof of smoke appeared at his right and right in front of Moka was another Naruto. Take this back to my apartment via Shunshin, the original instructed. The clone nodded and picked the bowl up before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Naruto looked back at Moka with concern on his face and he said, what happened Moka-chan? You can tell me. Moka bit down on her bottom lip and looked down as she twiddled her fingers. Before she could say anything though, a sudden presence became aware to the both of them when a girl said, I should have known you were the reason, Akashi Moka. Both turned to see a ticked-off looking Kurumu, her hands on her hips and a glare locked on the pinkhead. Naruto narrowed his eyes before speaking. Listen lady, it's not cool to interrupt a conversation. You're ruining everything, Kurumu snarled, seemingly ignoring Naruto, before leaping at Moka, caught off guard. Moka could only allow the cyan blue-haired beauty to tackle her from her seat before blocking her face from the sudden clawed assault. Naruto watched as Kurumu's features changed and she grew a pair of wings and a spade-tipped tail. Her nails grew into claws and her eyes became slitted. Rage was evident on her features. When he heard the whistling and cheering, he looked to see many boys surrounding the two. He shook his head at their actions, disappointed with their perverted ways, before shining into the scuffle and forming another duplicate of himself with his signature technique. The original grabbed Kurumu under her arms and bust as he pulled her to her feet while the clone helped Moka back to hers. Release me. I demand you release me, Kurumu shrieked. Several boys in the audience took a step forward to assist the busty beauty, but were stopped when Naruto snapped his head in their direction. His eternal Mangekyo was active and his eyes were narrowed. Go, away, he spoke sternly, overtaken with fear. The crowd slowly but surely dispersed, if only a larger distance away from where they originally were. Naruto shook his head and reverted his eyes back to their original form, a single tear of blood rolling down his cheek. He looked back at the girl in his duplicate's arms and asked, You okay? Moka nodded and the clone dispelled itself in a poof of smoke. The girl struggling in his arms glared heatedly at the pinkhead and the pinkhead glared back. After a moment of staring, Moka asked, Why did you attack me? Because you're in my way, Kurumu replied with a snarl, in my way of finding my destined one. Destined one? Moka and Naruto repeated in confusion. Kurumu continued to glare at the pinkhead while she explained. I am a succubus, the cyan blue-haired girl said, her voice turning deadly quiet. My race, succubi, are dying out and the only way we can reproduce is through finding our destined ones, the only men we will ever be capable of loving. Naruto tilted his head in understanding. Oh, that explains the genjutsu. One of my senseis is known as the icy succubus, seducing and tricking men with illusions. I always wondered where she would get that name. Kurumu looked over her shoulder at him in shock. You have succubi in your village? Naruto grinned. Nope. The poor succubus was now lost beyond belief and was about to ask the whiskered blonde more when the vampire asked, What was you plan to find your chosen one? It's destined one, you slut, Kurumu snarled, her attitude doing a complete 180, and if you must know, I was going to seduce every boy in the school. Naruto snickered when Moka's jaw dropped in astonishment. When Moka finally could form a coherent thought again, she asked, Okay, but what did I do? You just ruined it. The succubus growled, You and your pretty little pink hair. I was ignored by some boys because of you. But no one escaped my illusions or hypnosis. Not until Naruto. Really? Wow. Naruto replied in an odd tone as he still held Kurumu in his arms, if only to keep her from mauling Moka again, and to think I suck at genjutsu. Kurumu looked back at him with wide eyes before glaring back at the vampire and reaching out for her. Come here so I can strangle you by that pink hair of yours. She began to actively struggle in Naruto's grasp once again while Moka simply waited for her to calm down. Moka tilted her head again before continuing. What did I have to do with Naruto-kun's ability to escape your techniques? You obviously ensnared him in an enchantment. I know all about you vampires and your advanced hypnotic abilities. Kurumu snarled. You're just a freak of nature to everyone. Humans and monsters alike. You probably hypnotized him to be your friend and personal feeding supply. Hey! Naruto shouted. Seeing Moka's eyes fill with tears, Kurumu suddenly changed tactics and turned around in his arms, wrapping her arms around his neck and making Naruto feel 10 times hotter than he should. With me, you'd be free, Naruto, she said softly, no longer a slave to that blood-sucking slut. Moka's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates when Kurumu suddenly pressed her lips to his. Naruto's own eyes widening was lost to her as she closed her eyes and ran back towards her dorm room, pissed that his friend had been hurt. Naruto pushed the succubus out of his arms and off of his mouth, once again landing on her behind. Kurumu looked up at him with wide eyes. How? I used my strongest succubi spell in that kiss, she said with amazement. Why aren't you affected? Naruto glared down at her as his tomos spun angrily, making her flinch under his gaze, and said, I don't like anyone that openly hurts one of my precious people in front of me. Kurumu's eyes were easily double what they were before as he just stalked away without another word or glance. Crowd split as he walked in the direction Moka had run, a blue aura starting to surround him before flickering out of existence. The succubus ignored all the boys that suddenly rushed to her aid and continued to look in the direction the two had left in. Her mind spun as she tried to wrap her mind around what had happened. Naruto smiled at the faculty member that allowed him to check on his friend. The gargoyle woman that kept boys from the girls' dorms was quite understanding when he explained his concerns and, although she was sure he wasn't lying, she gave him a subtle warning to keep the indecent thoughts outside. He walked past her towards Moka's dorm room when he eventually had come to the door. He pressed his ear against the wood in an effort to get an idea of what was going on and frowned when he heard soft crying. Taking a small breath, Naruto knocked on the door. Please go away. A quiet muffled voice replied. Naruto sighed softly. Moka-chan, he said softly, it's me, Naruto, can I come in? It was quiet for a moment before he heard light footsteps and the unlocking of the door. He waited for her to open the door, but frowned when he heard the light footsteps once again and then the creaking of a bed followed by even more sniffling, giving his friend a moment to recompose herself, something he learned from past experiences with Sakura and Ino. Naruto opened the door before stepping halfway inside. The room was slightly larger than his own, but arranged in a humble manner, no more than what was necessary he guessed, although he was perplexed as to what the white thing on the desk was that had an apple on it and looked like a notebook. The whiskered blonde then looked on the red comforter of the bed to find Moka curled up on it with her back facing the door. Moka-chan? He said softly, do you want me to leave? He waited before he was answered with a quiet, no. Naruto smiled slightly and stepped fully into the room before shutting the door behind him. Walking over to the bed, Naruto took a seat near the edge of the bed, giving the young vampire the room she needed. Kurumu-san really got to you, didn't she? The whiskered blonde asked after a moment. Moka didn't reply, so Naruto continued. I am sorry she said what she did. I know you didn't hypnotize me just so I'd be your friend or your meal ticket. An enslaved friend isn't a friend at all. I told you earlier today that no matter who or what you are I'd be your friend, didn't I? He asked. When Moka nodded after a moment, Naruto smiled. Good, 'cause that goes the same for what anyone says about my friendship with you. Before he could say anything else, the bell rang throughout the dorm and Naruto sighed. Damn, I have to go. Moka-chan, I have chemistry next period and if you're behind in that, you're screwed. He started to stand and walk away when a hand wrapped around his wrist. Looking back, Naruto saw a red-eyed Moka, her eyes bloodshot from crying, and his resolve to do well in school for his village crumbled. His friend needed him, and class or not, he would be at her side. Don't leave, she begged softly. Naruto smiled and sat back down on the bed, moving her hand into his own and squeezing it reassuringly. I'll never leave any of my precious people, Moka-chan. The whiskered blonde assured with a grin. He was unaware how much those words meant to Moka. She didn't know what it was about her friend that had caused her to fall for him, whether it was his smile, his carefree attitude, his aura of mystery, his loyalty, his rebel ways, his kindness, or his blood she didn't know. All she knew was that she was falling head over heels for the spiky blonde sitting with her, and she would be damned if anyone tried to take him from her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Moka said with a smile as tears glistened in her eyes, in a last-ditch effort to keep her from crying again. The blonde unsealed his homeroom homework from a small slip of paper in his back pocket that had the kanji for work on it. He kept it hidden from her, glad there was no puff of smoke when he unsealed it. Now that that's out of the way, he started, making her look at him with confusion. Naruto surprised her when he pulled his homework out and he looked at her pleadingly. Can you help me with Nekonomi's-sensei's homework, please? The two worked on their homeroom homework for the rest of the night before the gargoyle lady came to inform them it was lights out and they could get in trouble if Naruto remained in her room. After thanking Moka for her help and bidding her good night, Naruto left her and heading back to the front of the building to go up the stairs to his own room. You know, the gargoyle woman suddenly spoke up, earning his attention. I am curious, do you have an older brother? Nope, sorry, Naruto replied with a grin. Got several younger ones though, not by blood, but they look up to me. Damn. The woman said with a snap of her fingers, I would have liked to meet a monster like you when I went here. That Moka girl sure is lucky to have a boyfriend like you. Yay, wait, what? Naruto shouted as he turned to her with wide eyes. He was then shown on the computer at the front desk, which he was amazed was more advanced than his village's own computer. The cell phone video made of him and Moka earlier that morning on a website called Heart Takers. Videos of real-life monster romance. The video was titled Some Girls Get All the Luck and he was surprised to hear the nurse from that morning speak softly during his conversation with Moka. The next morning, Naruto woke up with his arms interlocked behind his head and he stared at the ceiling. He felt as though he was woken up with a slap across the face with a trout after watching the video. The gargoyle woman, who he learned was named Demona, showed him. On a side note, their viewing was number 3,263,522. He was unaware of how intimate that moment looked to an outsider. Were all his talks with his friends like that? Especially when he tried to comfort them? If so, he wanted to kick himself. Now he had created a view of himself that made him seem like he was a decent guy, which he was, but he and Moka were only friends. Everyone who watched that video, which he prayed were mostly girls his age, would know doubly now come looking for him and making his life miserable. Too bad he wasn't as good with technology as Rock Lee was. It was a shock that Bushy Brows was a technological genius, but he had gotten over it a while ago. If he was as good at technology as Bushy Brows, he would delete the video from the website. His alarm started to blare and Naruto slammed his right hand. Now clutching a kunai, down, the alarm died upon impalement. And alas, it would not be missed by the whiskered blonde. Sitting up and running his hand through his hair, Naruto sighed before standing and going to the bathroom and beginning his morning rituals. After becoming clean, Naruto checked the time on the wall-mounted clock, pleased to see he still had 55 minutes before class began, and he sat in the middle of the room in a meditative position to get his chakra in the correct flow, slipping about 5% more of Kyuubi's chakra into it. He convulsed for a moment before he became used to the additional yokai in his system and stood. Naruto then dressed himself in his black jeans, sandals with protective tape over the toes, a long-sleeved fishnet shirt, rolling the sleeves up to his elbow, and to top it off, his white shirt with an orange swirl. The blonde put his Showdown necklace on before grabbing his homework and sealing it into a recently drawn seal on his arm. Now set for the day, Naruto grabbed his blazer vest and carried it with him as he went downstairs. He was greeted by an extremely happy Moka, which earned him a secretive smirk from Demona, and smiled at her. Good morning, Moka-chan. Naruto greeted the vampire with a grin. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Moka replied, bouncing eagerly from one foot to the other. I know you just woke up and are probably looking forward to eating breakfast, but... Naruto chuckled and tilted his head. Go ahead, Moka-chan. Before the words left his mouth, the girl was latched to his neck and drinking her fill happily. Her arms were also wrapped around his waist, an action shocking the blonde but one he welcomed nonetheless. When he chuckled slightly to show his amusement, Moka pinched him on the small of his back, making him yip before she returned to her meal and hugged herself closer to him. It made her feel as though he was all hers, no one else's, hers and hers alone. Her Uzumaki Naruto, she could get used to thinking that. When Moka finished draining him of his life source, Naruto cracked his neck and rubbed it as he usually did. He then smiled at her and opened the door for her, where she was promptly bombarded by her small fan club. Marry me, I love you, call me, walk to school with me? It amazed Naruto that she ignored them and instead chose walk with him, despite the fact she knew he was a Hanyu. The fanboys all scowled when she stopped in her walk and looked back at him with a smile. In their minds, they feared the blonde to the core. They had seen his strange eyes from time to time, and they had absolutely no idea what type of monster he was, but their hormones wouldn't stand for the fact the blonde had managed to snare the gorgeous girl before they could. A single bold boy took a step forward and leered at Moka, "Excuse me miss, but why are you with that loser of a monster? Wouldn't you rather be with a real monster? One like me?" A moment later he was lying on the ground and sobbing, the others weren't even sure what had happened. One minute he was leering at Moka, he took a side glance at the blonde and bam. He was on the ground, the blonde didn't even move, they all looked at him and he looked back, at every single one of them. They bailed when they saw his eyes, the black orbs with blue atom-shaped pupils. Naruto looked back down at the sobbing boy and grabbed him by the collar of his blazer with both hands before he slammed him into the wall of the dorm. "Leave her alone," Naruto growled quietly. "You keep your distance. I've seen what fans do to people, it destroys them. I will not let that happen to my friends, now get lost." The boy ran off, a noticeable stain on his khaki pants over his crotch. Naruto rubbed his eyes, clearing the blood tears that gathered from the use of his eyes before he looked back at a concerned Moka. He gave her a foxy grin and was about to reassure her worries when another voice spoke up. "Naruto-kun." Naruto and Moka both turned to see a cyan blue-haired succubus standing awkwardly to their right with her hands behind her back. The vampire scowled while the whiskered blonde merely arched a brow and put his hands in his pockets. Kurumu bit down on her lip and looked at her feet before looking up at the blonde again. "I wanted to apologize to you and Moka. I was wrong in my assumptions. I was also wrong to say those things about Moka. I want to start over." "What is your game, Succubus?" Moka hissed. Naruto raised an arm and gave her a glance from the corner of his eyes before looking back at the blue-haired buxom girl. "I accept your apology," he said, making the blue-haired girl perk up, only to dash the happiness when he continued. "To me, you want a new start. You apologize to Moka-chan, too, right here and now." To say the two of them were shocked at his stipulations would be an understatement. Naruto crossed his arms and leaned against the wall before looking between them both. He raised his left hand and gestured to Moka. "Well, go on." The two looked at each other before Kurumu sighed and spoke. "I am sorry, I should have never accused you of doing exactly what I was doing. Can you forgive me?" Moka kept her eyes on the succubus eyes and slowly nodded. "I can, in time. You better learn your place, though, Kurumu." Kurumu grinned. "Right, I'll work on that." Naruto grinned and spread his arms. "You're friends now, Mazel Tov. Now, please enlighten us about what brought about this change." "Well," Kurumu said, walking over to Naruto, "after you dropped me on my ass for the second time," she ignored the smirk Moka now had on her face, "I began wondering just how you could resist my spells and charms. Then it hit me in the story of how my parents came together. My mother told me when she met my father. She tried every spell and incantation she knew of to get him with her. None of them worked and she became obsessed with him, wondering why nothing worked. Then she decided to go about the human ways of seduction, dating, and they did. Each date they shared, her understanding about why he could resist her became clearer." She pushed her chest up against Naruto and smiled at him as she wrapped her arms around his neck. The blonde in question turned a healthy shade of red and chuckled nervously. Moka was fuming, barely resisting the urge to strangle the succubus for her flirtatious ways and moving in on her man. "The reason my father could resist my mother's charms," Kurumu said as she pulled Naruto's head down to her level, "was because he was her destined one." Naruto only grew more confused, but Moka understood exactly what she was hinting at and grabbed her by the shoulders, pulling her away from Naruto. The succubus rolled a few feet away before getting back to her feet and snarled, prepared to go into her true form. "He is not your destined one." Moka snarled before looking over at Naruto. "Take my rosary off." I don't think he started," only to be interrupted by Kurumu. "I think he is," Kurumu replied, smirking as Moka growled at her. "Oh yes, he managed to pull me off of you while I was in my true form, resisted my charms, and I got a particularly nice look at what he's hiding underneath his baggy shirt this morning. A six-pack to die for. That's it. Take my rosary off Naruto-kun so I can kill her." The vampire snarled, grabbing Naruto's hand and forcing him to grasp the rosary. When he reacted and pulled his hand back, he managed to do as she wished and Moka changed once again. Silver-haired Moka appeared in a flash of light and she glanced over at the blonde. "I see no real threat here," she said in a calm voice. "Why did you remove the rosary, Uzumaki?" Naruto chuckled nervously under her gaze. He was caught in the strange feeling of being creeped out and turned on from looking at the taller girl's eyes. Rubbing the back of his neck, he held his hand out to the now transformed Kurumu and said, "Well, apparently, Moka-chan. You refer to me as though we are friends," Moka said, narrowing her eyes. "While that may be true with the other Moka, I am not her. Refer to me with respect, Uzumaki." "Right, Moka-san," Naruto tried, earning a nod of approval before continuing. "Okay, well, Kurumu-chan is a succubus and thinks I am her destined one or something like that. Kurumu-chan listed some reasons as to why I belong to her and it made Moka-chan mad for some reason. Do you know why? Moka arched a delicate brow and thought, surely he isn't that dense, is he? Her train of thought was interrupted by the sudden battle cry that came from the succubus in front of her. With a sigh, she vanished from Kurumu's line of sight and the succubus looked all around for her foe. A finger tapped on her shoulder and she turned around to see a slightly miffed Moka. You dare attack me, you weak worm? She asked as she brought her fist back. Know your place. Before the fist could connect, it was caught in a solid grip from the right. Moka and Kurumu looked to see a very serious-looking Naruto. His eyes no longer Tomoed and now the very version that had frightened away most of Moka's fan base. Both girls felt a chill go down their spines as he looked at them with this eye. Tsukuyomi, Naruto said quietly. Both girls were suddenly enveloped in a large flash of blue light before it went dark. When they awoke, they were in the realm where the sky was an unnatural dark blue and everything else was black. Instead of one Moka, however, there were two. Kurumu looked between the two girls in confusion before glaring at both of them. This is an interesting concept, a familiar voice said to all of them. The three girls jumped and spun around to see Naruto walking towards them. He was dressed differently, still clad in the black pants and sandals. The difference now was his shirt was replaced with a sleeveless skin-tight black shirt, a gray armored vest on his chest along with matching arm guards over the black sleeves on his arms that ended in the middle of his bicep. What got their attention was the headband. It was black and held the bangs out of his eyes. A swirl was carved into the metal protecting his forehead to form the shape of a leaf. I didn't think Tsukuyomi would ensnare both Moka-san and Moka-chan, he said in a somewhat amazed concept. Good to know. Now listen up and listen well. You three will not fight to the extent you were about to. If one of you winds up in the hospital because of this problem I am causing, I will vanish. What? No. Kurumu and Outer Moka said simultaneously. Inner Moka scoffed. She wasn't frightened by this threat, but she did understand just how hurt Outer Moka would be by it. The three looked at each other and nodded before they were released from the world they were in. Moka dipped a brush onto the blue of the palette and applied said paint to her canvas. She paused and took a step back to admire her work. She was currently working on her subject for the upcoming grade, which was needless to say, the face and upper body of a boy she cared deeply for. The vampire sighed before dipping her brush into the yellow paint to apply some lighting to the portrait's hair. Oh my, the art teacher, Ishigami Hitomi, murmured as she appeared behind Moka. He looks quite the handsome young man. Tell me, Akashi-chan, does he go to yokai? Her cheeks now a tinge of pink. Moka nodded. Hi, Ishigami-sensei, he's my friend. A handsome friend, Ishigami commented, but the way you captured him, the way his eyes seemed to twinkle in this picture, you want him to be more. And no, Moka stuttered out as her cheeks darkened. I am just capturing his image for the grade. He tried to transfer to this class but can't until after the first grading period is over and done with. Ishigami hummed as she started to walk away. Keep the good work up, Akashi-chan, perhaps you should bring him by later for a comparison. Moka smiled and resumed painting as she wondered what her object of affection was doing right now. All she knew is he had been reassigned a class with Kurumu because the study hall the day before had to be fumigated. Naruto refused to comment. Only having a secretive smile on his face, Moka didn't trust the succubus alone with her man for 1 second, but put those thoughts aside to work on her painting. These are amazing, Kurumu moaned as she and the rest of the cooking class bit into Naruto's chocolate chip muffins. The blonde smiled sheepishly and scratched the back of his head. I agree, Uzumaki-san, the cooking teacher, Yada-sensei, who was a kappa, said as he grabbed another muffin. These certainly are delectable, 100%. I might have to share one with a friend. Naruto sheepishly chuckled again. Ah, well, to think, my destined one is a great sweets chef. Kurumu sighed, suddenly appearing at Naruto's side and hugging his arm between her breasts. Several boys in the class glared at him while several girls pouted at the news of him being taken before glaring at the blue-haired girl wrapped around his arm. The blonde with tomos in his eyes simply smiled, dreading how this would affect his life. Would you get off of him, Kurumu? Moka asked with a glare locked on the blue-haired succubus that was glued to Naruto's arm as they approached the pink-haired vampire at their lunch table. Why, jealous? Kurumu asked with a smirk, sensing the tension rising. Naruto cut in. Oh, I almost forgot, Naruto said, fibbing as he knew he was going to need something to prevent a fight and unsealed a spare muffin. Having added a blood pill he made at the infirmary out of his own blood just for this muffin. Handing the muffin to Moka, he continued with, I added some of my blood. I don't know if you only eat blood or what, so, yeah. Moka bit into the muffin and the mix of Naruto's delectable blood and chocolate chips took her far beyond cloud 9. A small moan of pleasure came from her mouth and she bit into the muffin with more vigor. making the blonde grin and the succubus release the blonde, cross her arms under her chest and scowl. Kurumu was slightly jealous that he had specially made Moka a muffin, but she wouldn't let the vampire know that. Glad you like it, Naruto said, interlocking his hands behind his head and grinning as he watched his pink-haired friend devour her muffin. He continued jokingly with, maybe I should just keep making you food with my blood so you don't suck me dry every day. Moka stopped eating and she paled before tossing the muffin's paper aside and latching onto the blonde before biting into his neck. Caught off guard, Naruto could only let Moka drink a little bit before she released him. Ignoring the glare she was being given by Kurumu, while Naruto rubbed his slightly sore neck, Moka licked her lips and said, nope, fresh from your body is the best. Naruto laughed weakly while Kurumu glared at the pinket. Thinking quickly, Kurumu glomped onto Naruto's side, wrapping her arms around his waist, making the blonde blush and the vampire scowl. Naruto-kun, the blue-haired beauty purred, don't I get a special treat? Why you got the first muffin in the batch, remember, Kurumu-chan. Naruto replied, trying to regain a hold of his hormones. The succubus pouted and jutted her bottom lip out at him. But Moka got a special muffin. She whined. Naruto mentally smacked himself in the back of the head for being so inconsiderate. Moka, however, was enjoying the fact she had gotten a specially made treat while her nemesis hadn't. The pinket's smug grin dropped when Naruto said, well, what would you want me to make? A glint in Kurumu's eyes made Moka unnerved when the succubus glanced out of the corner of her eye at the vampire before looking back up at the whiskered blonde. Leaning up into his ear, Kurumu whispered hotly, let's both go make a sandwich. Naruto blinked, showing his confusion, while Moka fumed and her eye twitched in irritation. The blonde asked, what kind of sandwich? Kurumu smiled and moved one of her hands to start drawing non-existent circles on his chest. Well, we're going to need the bed, you and me. Naruto's face turned a beet red and he calmly pushed Kurumu off of him. Taking in a shuddering breath, the shinobi said, I need to go take a shower, a very, very cold shower. Moka and Kurumu frowned when he vanished in a swirl of leaves. The two girls turned and glared at each other, lightning flashing between their eyes. You might as well give up, Kurumu said, breaking the silence, he's going to be mine. Moka narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms before replying, I highly doubt that, all you're doing is trying to get him in bed. That's a problem, Kurumu asked with a grin. The vampire clenched her jaw as she continued, when I get Naruto-kun in bed, he'll see that I am the one for him, just as he's the one for me. There's more to love than sex, succubus, Moka growled, her fists clenched tightly and her teeth grinding against each other. Oh, I agree, Kurumu replied with a smirk, but it's a big part. What are you going to do if you bed him and he isn't your destined one? Moka asked, making Kurumu narrow her own eyes. He is my destined one, the blue-haired girl replied with a slight snarl. I know the difference between love and lust, do you? Moka curled her upper lip in a snarl while Kurumu narrowed her eyes and glared. They stayed this way before Kurumu started to walk away, confused. Moka called out, where are you going? Looking over her shoulder, the succubus called back without any shame, I am going to go spy on Naruto-kun. Moka wanted to smack herself in the face when she heard that reply before she went after the girl. Her defense was that she wanted to try and keep the succubus from trying anything with her man. But her real reason for following the girl was she secretly wanted to know if Naruto looked like he did in her dreams, not that she dreamt about him. Who was she kidding? Naruto turned the faucet off and leaned against the wall of his bathroom. He was clad in only his shorts and his hair was slightly damp from his shower. Kurumu's suggestion was very, very hard for him to decline, but he just wasn't sure of what he felt towards either girl. With Moka, he knew he felt a deep friendship for her. Kurumu was a different story, she was a new friend. But her advancements kind of made him uncomfortable, and he felt something unknown to him whenever he looked at either of them. Taking a deep breath, Naruto pushed himself off the wall and went towards his bedroom. He grabbed his necklace that was on the table and put it on before dropping onto his bed with an arm over his head. If only Ero Sennin or Kakashi-sensei were here, the blonde sighed, they would know what I should do. Taking another moment to think, a thought occurred to him and he sat up. Going over to his desk, he wrote a quick question to his sensei on a piece of paper before folding it up. The blonde bit into his thumb before performing the proper hand seals and putting his hand on the desk. Kuchio's no jutsu. A small green toad appeared in a puff of smoke and Naruto arched a brow. The toad smiled up at him. Its underbelly was a bright red and he wore the blue jacket similar to Gamakichi and Gamatatsu. You must be Naruto ni, the toad said with a smile. I am Hikari, Kichi Nissan's Imoudo. Hi, Naruto drawled out. Why did, never mind, just do me a favor and pass a message along to Ero Sennin. Naruto then handed the young toad his letter to Jiraiya and Hikari smiled. She vanished in a puff of smoke and the blonde leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest and his eyes shut as he thought. Why didn't Gamakichi or Gamatatsu show up when I used about 1% of my chakra? Naruto asked himself. I gotta go investigate this development. Naruto got up from his chair and grabbed a spare mesh shirt, deciding to get some training in as well as checking out why he didn't summon either of the two toads he usually did. Pulling his mesh shirt on, Naruto opened his door and left his room. He ran back into his room as he realized he forgot his shoes. He grabbed his sandals and pulled them on before going back out the door and coming face to face with the two girls that had brought him to this scenario. "Hi Naruto-kun," they chorused, looking at each other with a quick glare before smiling back at him. Before he could try and maneuver around them, both latched onto one of his arms, glaring at each other before smiling again. "Naruto-kun," Kurumu started with a purr, earning the whiskered blonde's attention. "I need help with my calculus homework, can you please help me?" "But Ishigami-sensei wants you to come with me to meet her for my grade," Moka said, looking up at him with the puppy dog look. Crumbled by the look, Naruto looked at Kurumu apologetically and said, "The calculus isn't due for a couple days, so I should probably go with Moka if her teacher said so." Moka shot the succubus a victory grin and pulled Naruto with her down the stairs. Leaving a fuming blue-haired girl behind, Kurumu ground her teeth before noticing Naruto's bedroom was still open to a crack and an idea came over her. With a grin, the blue-haired girl entered the room and shut the door behind her. She went over to the window and left it open before flying out towards her own bedroom that was in the dorm nearby. Kurumu smiled as she was sure her destined one would be pleased with the surprise she had for him. "Ishigami-sensei," Moka called as she opened the door to a slight crack. There was a new statue standing in the center, something that had happened for the past few days, so Moka paid it no heed. Who is it?" Ishigami called back after clearing her throat. Moka smiled and stepped further into the room. "Akashi Moka, sensei," Moka replied, Naruto walking in behind her and looking around, his eyes locking on the statue before them. It looked somewhat familiar but he wasn't sure why. A woman walked out, her features were kind of attractive to the whiskered blonde, except for the weird green dreadlocks pulled back into a ponytail. Well, the woman, who Naruto assumed to be Ishigami-sensei, said as she walked towards the two, "I wondered why your painting was so handsome, but in reality it does him no justice." Moka's cheeks were now a rosy red and Naruto laughed nervously as he rubbed the back of his neck. Ishigami smiled and started walking around him, examining his person. She looked back at the pink-haired girl and gave her a friendly smile. "I was right, your painting really doesn't do him any justice," Ishigami said, stopping in front of the whiskered blonde. "Perhaps if he wants to pose for a sculpting? Oh, perhaps a Greco-Roman sculpture." "A what?" Naruto asked with an arched brow. Moka's face was now cherry red. Greco-Roman sculptures were usually men or women sculpted from marble while someone posed in the nude. If Naruto agreed to that, Moka didn't know how she would react. "Oh, just come over here and help me move this statue, I'll explain everything afterwards," Ishigami said. Naruto shrugged and did as the teacher said. He was on thin ice because of the stink bomb incident, so he wanted to wait until the heat cooled off before pulling another prank. The whiskered blonde went over to the statue and carefully wrapped his arms around its stomach before lifting it up with a chakra boost. "Just store it in the back of this closet," Ishigami said with a smile as she opened a closet full of statues. As soon as Naruto walked in, she shut the door and locked it before turning back towards Moka with a sinister smile. "Ishigami-sensei?" Moka stuttered out, taking a step back in fear. Naruto set the statue down on the ground and shook his arms. He leaned on the statue and wiped the sweat from his brow. "These things are fucking heavy," the blonde muttered before looking at the statue again. "Why do you look so familiar?" Naruto noticed a tag on the front pocket of the statue and leaned closer to read it. Some of the letters were faded, but with the help of a kunai he had hidden in his pocket, he chipped the stone away to make the words on the tag more noticeable. No sooner had he done so did his eyes widen and his skin paled. "Yaida-sensei." He spoke with slight fear. His mind was sent for a spiral and he was dragged from his thoughts when a crash and a female's scream came to his attention. Naruto turned around and rushed towards the door, having to be slow due to the various posed statues. A good portion of them were attractive girls, a sign Naruto did not like. Moka dove under a table to avoid her sensei's stone glance. Her heart pounded in her ears and she swallowed heavily, wishing she could take her rosary off to protect herself. "Come out, Akashi-chan," Ishigami, now in her true form, hissed. She was a snake from the waist down and her hair was free. Multiple snakes adorning her head. Her skin had darkened to an unattractive gray and her lips turned into a rustic red. Ishigami had become the art teacher because of the excuse to capture the most attractive beings in this school for her own art. Art was to be immortalized with beauty, something she should have had were it not for that dreadful mistake all those millennia ago. Why are you doing this, Ishigami-sensei? Moka shouted as she rushed to another table to hide behind. Ishigami laughed. Oh, if only she knew. Why? Why do I deserve to be such a hideous beast? Why do you deserve to be so gorgeous when you are worse than I? Because life isn't fair. Ishigami replied as she looked around for any sign of the girl. The slamming of the closet door was getting annoying, but she would take care of the boy once she had gotten this vampire. A small speck of pink got her attention and she slithered over to one of the tables with an evil sneer. I have you now, my dear Moka-chan, Ishigami purred evilly. Now hold still and become immortalized by my gaze. Moka shrieked and held her eyes shut when the table she was hiding under was tossed to the other side of the room. A hand grabbed her jaw and forced her head to turn. She could hear multiple hisses and could feel the cold of the upcoming blast that would come from her sensei's gaze. The young vampire apologized multiple times in her head to Naruto for this mess she had gotten them into, again. Before Ishigami could freeze the girl in her hold, the closet door busted open and she turned to see a blue aura-covered blonde. His tomoed eyes spun angrily and his fists clenched and unclenched as he looked at her. Put her down, bitch, Naruto growled. Ishigami turned her whole body to face the boy, holding the pink-haired girl tauntingly in her arms. Or else what, boy? She taunted, gonna make me dizzy with your eyes? The blonde watched as she trailed a claw down Moka's cheek, capturing a single tear in her claw. The Gorgon lifted the tear up to look at it before eating it and shivering in pleasure. Oh, how I forget the feeling of fear that overcame my prey, she mused aloud with a sigh. She suddenly heard a chirping in the air and looked over to see one of the blonde's hands now encased in electricity. This was one of my friend's signature moves, Naruto informed her. I have yet to try it, so be pleased to know you are the first to witness what I have firsthand. He then rushed towards her, making Ishigami laugh at his foolishness. The Gorgon's laughter was stopped when the chirping pierced through the arm that held Moka and Naruto cried out, Chidori! A shrill shriek of pain came from the Gorgon as she released the vampire. Naruto grabbed Moka by the arms and pulled her towards the door while Ishigami rolled around in pain clutching her arm. Naruto-kun, what was that? Moka's question was cut off as Naruto dragged her through the hallway. They ran to the right down the hallway, with Naruto shoving countless individuals out of the way, when the sound of a door being busted open an unpleasant shriek of anger came from a very pissed-off Gorgon. It's not important right now, Naruto shouted back, his eyes searching for an easy exit as he dragged his friend away from the danger of the Gorgon that chased them. Several screams went behind them, Moka looking back to see the horror of Ishigami turning several students to stone as she chased the two. Oh, screw this, Naruto grumbled as he stopped and turned around, pulling Moka behind him before he released her arm and shoved his hands into his pockets. He pulled out 2 shuriken and crossed his arms over his shoulders. Come on lady, he whispered, keep your eyes on the birdie. He tossed the shuriken at her before going through several hand seals, finalizing on the tiger seal. Naruto called out, Cage Shuriken no Jutsu. The 2 shuriken multiplied into 200 and flew through the air, slicing the furious Gorgon in various places while 2 landed dead on in her eyes. She shrieked again in anger before pulling the 2 shuriken out of her eyes, leaving 2 bloody and glowing holes in her head. Okay, that didn't work, Naruto said, taking a step back and standing defensively in front of Moka. The vampire grabbed his shoulder, earning his attention. Take my rosary off, she hissed at him. Naruto looked back at her before glancing at the approaching Gorgon once again and swore in his head. The whiskered blonde turned around and grabbed the latch that kept the rosary around Moka's neck. Before he could remove it, a large sharp tail impaled him through his shoulder, making him cry out in pain as he tore the rosary off. Ishigami flung the blonde away and off of her tail as she watched Moka transform into a completely frightening and, to her ire, even more beautiful woman. Inner Moka locked her red eyes on the Gorgon and looked past her to see the spiky-haired blonde grabbing his shoulder in pain. Her eyes narrowed before looking back at the eyeless Gorgon. This is too good to be true, Ishigami hissed angrily. I defile a temple once and become cursed with a hideous figure. But you vampires kill and slaughter humans with no remorse and you have gorgeous ones? There is no justice? You are correct in that manner, Gorgon, Moka sneered, but you'll wish that you hadn't tried to freeze me with your glance. You shall learn your place. Moka rushed forward and delivered a solid kick to the stomach of the Gorgon. Making her slide backwards, Moka followed through with a right hook and then swept the Gorgon off her tail with a hard roundhouse to her hips. Shattering one, Ishigami roared in pain as she connected with the floor. The vampire was far from finished as she looked up from the downed Gorgon at the whiskered blonde, whose eyes had become the strange black and blue atom pupils and held a glowing and swirling red orb in his right hand while his left lay limp at his side. The two exchanged a nod. Moka grabbed the tail of the nearly decimated Gorgon and used all her might to throw the art teacher towards her friend. This is where you learn your place. Moka snarled as Ishigami flew towards Naruto. Naruto pulled his hand back and his eyes bled slightly as he held the red Rasengan in his hand. When Ishigami was the right distance from him, Naruto thrusted his right arm out and shouted, "Rasengan." The direct attack to her skull caused the art teacher's head to burst from the attack. Naruto gritted his teeth as the rest of the Gorgon's body flew into his attack and he was covered with her gunk. Naruto spat some of the deceased sensei's blood to his right and shuddered before his eyes reverted to normal. He cracked his neck and clutched his left shoulder that was slowly closing up. Naruto fell back against the lockers on his right and grit his teeth as he forced more of Kyuubi's chakra into his shoulder to speed up the healing. A presence to his left made him look up at Moka's red-slitted eyes. He sighed and tilted his head back, a small bang coming from the impact of his head on the locker. "I guess I have some explaining to do, huh?" he asked her, getting a nod from the vampire. The whiskered blonde groaned. "Shit, here, grab my arm real quick." "You should be at the infirmary," Inner Moka said, kneeling to grab Naruto's arm. He ignored her and performed a few one-handed seals before they both vanished in a swirl of leaves. They reappeared in his dorm room, Moka standing and holding her head and stomach. Naruto tossed the rosary to her, which she easily caught, before pointing to the left. "Bathroom's right there," he said as he went over to the bed. "Take a few drinks of water and the nausea will pass." Moka nodded and placed the rosary around her neck, reverting back to normal. Suddenly feeling sick, Outer Moka went to the bathroom while Naruto sat down on the edge of his bed. With a groan, the whiskered blonde removed his mesh shirt and looked at the smaller hole in his shoulder. A sudden gasp from behind him made the young shinobi jump and turn around to glare at Kurumu, only for his right hand to clench his nose tight. The buxom blue-haired girl was now only clad in a black see-through nightie with black lacy undergarments underneath, something that did little to hide her figure. She was staring intently at the gaping hole in his shoulder. "What happened?" Kurumu asked after staring for a moment, appearing at his side faster than he could think possible. "Did Moka do this? Are you going to die? You can't die?" "Whoa, whoa, whoa, calm down," Naruto said, pulling his shoulder from her hold. "I am going to be fine. Moka didn't do this." "What happened to your arm?" Moka shrieked. Rushing to Naruto's side next to Kurumu and examining the hole, Naruto sighed and stood before walking to his desk, opening a drawer and pulling out a piece of paper with a large intricate design on it. He pulled a cloth from another drawer and bit into it before pressing the paper against his arm. The design on the paper glowed brightly and Naruto shut his eyes and groaned as he bit into the cloth, his whole body tensing and making the two girls stare at him worriedly. When the glow finally died down, Naruto dropped the rag from his mouth and his arm fell from his shoulder, dropping the paper from his hand. Where a wound was once present, now a steaming spot on his shoulder remained. The blonde rolled his head back and took some breaths while the two girls stared at his definition now that he was seemingly healed. Moka's face was the exact shade of a cherry as Naruto fought the pain down. She swallowed as her throat started to dry up and she thought, "Oh my, Kurumu was right, they look so perfect, I must, oh my. Look at that bead of sweat vanish beyond his waistline. Now I want to know what he is hiding beneath those pants." Bad thoughts, good thoughts. Kurumu's thoughts were borderline XXX rated, so they could not be shown in this story. However, her eyes were fogged over and falling down from the corner of her mouth, which was curled up in a smile. A bit of drool started to form. Her glazed-over eyes followed another bead of sweat trail down from his neck to his waistline. The Swedish band Yellow's "Oh Yeah" played through her mind and the succubus licked her lips. Naruto looked up at the two girls and saw the lust flicker over their eyes when he remembered just how Kurumu was dressed, turning a nice healthy shade of scarlet red. Naruto swiveled around in his chair to grab a large green GI off the top of his dresser before tossing it to the blue-haired girl without making eye contact. Kurumu was pulled from her daydream as the article of clothing hit her face. Kurumu looked down at the clothing to see it was a type of top and looked back up at Naruto curiously. The whiskered blonde was avoiding looking at her, making the succubus grin as she tossed the shirt to the side, stood from her seat on the bed and sauntered over to him, straddling her target's lap and smiling seductively as his face turned a whole new shade of red. Kurumu ran her hands over the blonde's chest. "You know, Naruto-koi," the blue-haired beauty purred as she ran her hands over Naruto's chest, "if you want, I can convince Moka over there that she's not needed right now." Well, ya see," Naruto fumbled for a response. Kurumu smiled and pressed a finger to the stuttering boy's lips. "Shush, shush, shush." She shushed him, making the blonde silence completely, and he looked down at her with his tomoed eyes. Kurumu moved her finger down his lips slowly before closing the space between them, and just before she kissed him, Kurumu whispered, "Just relax and let this happen, Naruto-koi." With that said and done, Kurumu pressed her lips to his own and wrapped her arms around his neck. Naruto was still for a long time, his mind having short-circuited the moment Kurumu touched his lips with her finger. It wasn't that she had cast a spell on him, no, it was the fact he had never been in a situation like this. He didn't know how to respond without getting slapped across the face, so he just let his body move on autopilot, his mouth moving against Kurumu's and his hands resting on her hips. Kurumu was on cloud 9 as she passionately kissed her destined one. His lips tasted like pork and, oddly enough, grapes. It was driving the succubus insane, and she could feel Naruto's approval of her actions pressing against her thigh through his pants. One of her hands went to the back of Naruto's head and she ran her tongue along his bottom lip, asking for entrance. Moka snapped from her own daydream when a feminine moan hit her ears. She blinked a few times before the sight before her became clear. Straddling her man was Kurumu, and from the looks of things, she was the one inciting the moment. Now seeing red, Moka stood from the bed and leapt at Kurumu. Naruto, hearing a battle cry come from the pink-haired vampire, quickly utilized his Kawamari skill to switch places with the GI that was still on the floor where Kurumu had tossed it. He then stood, frozen in place, as he watched a small fight between the two girls start to develop on his floor. Now slightly uncomfortable, Naruto grabbed the GI that was on the chair before pulling it on and leaving the room, not even bothering to attempt to step into the fight as he knew from past experiences with Ino and Sakura that girl fights get ugly. He wanted no part of that. Naruto was training in the middle of the woods that surrounded the academy. His knuckles were bleeding from punching a tree for the past half hour, and now his legs were starting to ache because he was delivering kick after kick to the trunk of a very solid redwood. The whiskered blonde was gritting his teeth and working out his frustration. He was being chased by the two most beautiful girls in his grade and he had no idea how to deal with it. He was always the one doing the chasing. Sakura could atone to that. The toad-eyed boy growled as he delivered a chakra-infused roundhouse kick and created a large dent in the tree. Naruto pulled his leg back and rubbed it, groaning as the muscle and broken skin healed slowly. Turning around and leaning back against the tree, he continued to think about what was going on in his life. He was far from home, no contact with old friends as of yet, but he could still summon. The thought of summoning brought him back to earlier, before he killed a faculty member. He was sure he would be in the clear, but he was still nervous about what would happen to him. Biting down on his thumb, Naruto pushed 10% of his chakra into his summoning technique and slammed his hand into the ground. Kachiyose no Jutsu. In a large puff of smoke, a horse-sized red and blue toad appeared wearing a blue vest. Around his waist was an orange belt that had a small wakizashi and a sake bottle attached to it. He looked around before his yellow eyes landed on the blonde in front of him and he grinned. "Geez, bro, where ya been?" Gamakichi asked with his grin on his face. Naruto grinned back and held his fist out, the toad giving him a light tap with his own fist. "Been stuck here ever since I killed Teme and took his eyes," the blonde said, pointing at his eyes. Gamakichi looked at them and nodded. "Finally got him, Gamakichi asked as he took his sake bottle off his belt and took a drink before passing it to Naruto. The whiskered blonde nodded thankfully and wiped the opening off before taking his own sip of the forbidden drink. Naruto swallowed another gulp down before wiping his mouth off with his arm and giving Gamakichi his bottle back. The blonde looked at the toad and asked, "So, any idea why it took 10% of my chakra to summon you? I mean, before I killed Teme it only took 1? Gamakichi mused over this as he drank his rice water. When he finished and corked the bottle again he replied, "Maybe when you took his eyes, you gained more chakra. I think you could summon Imouto because she is usually 1/10 the amount of chakra needed to summon me. You might think it's 10% of your chakra, but you have so much now that your chakra equations in your head are off. The chakra you used to summon me was in fact 10% of your old chakra amount, but seeing as you just got more, you couldn't differentiate the difference between 1% and 10%, might want to work on that. So I have 10 times my old amount of chakra Naruto mused aloud once he understood what Gamakichi said as he looked at the sky. The horse-sized toad walked to Naruto's side and relaxed with him. He looked at the blonde before looking back up at the sky with a sad smile. "Ero Sennin is dead," Gamakichi said. Knowing how the blonde would react, Naruto froze, not moving, going ahead and continuing. The toad said, "He died fighting the leader of the Akatsuki. Pain. Tsunade is currently preparing for war against a Megacure. Gaara is going to assist her." Naruto's fists clenched and he moved his head to rest on his knees before he asked, "Am I going back?" Gamakichi shook his head sadly. "The toads are staying out of the fight. Ma and Pa are too injured and Konoha banished you. Pops is pissed, but he's staying out of the fight too, and I quote, teach a lesson to those ungrateful bastards." Naruto chuckled darkly. "That sounds just like Bunta. How's Gamatatsu?" "Oututo?" Gamakichi asked, glancing at the blonde out of the corner of his eye before looking back up. He's okay. Gotten really fat from the sweets he stole from me. I don't care though, I got my sake. Naruto snorted, drunken baka. I'm not. Gamakichi shot back with a grin as Naruto laughed. What's this about you having 2 girls after you, bro? Imouto read your note to mom. She thinks it was sweet that you wanted to ask Ero Sennin for advice. How is your mom, Kichi? Naruto asked, still keeping his head resting on his knees and changing the subject. Gamakichi chuckled. She's all right, bro, the toad replied. She's busy with the tadpoles, but you know. Yeah, Naruto replied with a nod. His head snapped up when a twig snapped and he saw the 2 girls that were, last he knew, fighting over him. Kurumu was wearing one of his hoodies, still probably wearing her lingerie underneath it, and Moka was carrying his school uniform vest while still wearing her school uniform. Scrapes and bruises were on both of their cheeks and arms, evidence of their fight. Gamakichi looked at both girls before whistling and slugging Naruto in the arm. Way to go, bro. They're better than you made them out to be in the letter. The 3 teens all turned a slight shade of red when the 2 girls did a double take at the toad. Their eyes widened and they looked back at the toad-eyed blonde questionably. Naruto turned and glared at the toad. Kichi, Naruto growled. The toad laughed nervously before suddenly dispelling with a puff of smoke. The blonde brought his fists up to his head and growled into them before looking back up. What was that? Was that a toad? What happened to the tree? Naruto-kun? You okay? Naruto-koi? Naruto rubbed his temples as the 2 girls bombarded him with questions concerning the area. Several trees were partially destroyed by his attacks and he was covered in sweat and blood. He held his hands up and said, enough. Both girls silenced as he stood up and rubbed his forehead. Naruto looked at them before saying, that was my summoning toad, and one of my best friends, Gamakichi. He is a summoning animal. In my village, or my continent, it is common for people to sign contracts with beasts from another realm. I can't go into how it's done, because I don't exactly understand it myself. What exactly are you, Naruto-koi? Kurumu asked after taking a moment to let the information sink in. Naruto grinned slightly as he started to walk away. Moka and Kurumu exchanged a look, glare before following him and heard his quiet response. I am one of a kind. The next day, Naruto and Moka found themselves in their homeroom, one taking notes and the other plotting a prank. Nekonomic was talking about blending into the human world and how a greater portion of humanity groups together based on their common interests. So for today, Nekonomic said with a smile, I want you all to take the time today to visit all the club stands and find one to join, one like, say, the newspaper club. Naruto looked up from his plotting and flipped his notebook shut. It was filled with multiple plans for pranks. He looked over at Moka, who was looking at him with a smile. He smiled back, but he had a feeling she was still wondering what monster he was. The bell rang, signaling the end of class and apparently the end of the school day. Please be sure to stop by and have a look at our newspaper club. Nekonomic called out as Naruto and Moka left the room. Naruto looked over at some of the club stands before Moka started pulling him to random ones. The chemistry club smiled when the pink-haired girl approached them, scowling when they saw the blonde that was being dragged in their direction. The brown-haired boy with braces, the apparent leader of the club, stepped forward and gave her a friendly smile. Why hello there, he said with a nasally voice. Can you help us with the, love potion we're working on? Moka had not fully understood his words, so she smiled and said, sure, why not? Before the brown-haired boy could give her a glass with green liquid, Naruto intercepted it and sniffed its contents. Coughing to the side, the blonde gave the glass back and said, okay. Wow, first off, that is not a love potion, that's knockout gas. The chemists all swallowed heavily and Moka blinked as Naruto continued with a smile. Good thing I checked it. Otherwise Moka-chan here would be unconscious and I would have to carry her all the way to the nurse's office and explain what happened. I might have to deal with the SPC member that hangs out there, too. Apparently they don't trust me. Moka smiled and looked at the chemists, while said boys all shrunk back under the whiskered blonde's gaze. His tomoed eyes were narrowed and spinning, making them all become fully aware of his thoughts. If you try to drug any girl ever again, I will kill you. Moka, unaware of Naruto's silent threat, said, thank you, but I don't think I want to work with chemicals that could hurt me if I am not careful. Why yes, it'd for the best, the nasally voice of the club president said as Moka dragged the still glaring Naruto away. The next stand wasn't any better for Naruto. The photography club had tried to get Moka to go with them and pose for pictures while wearing some revealing clothing. Moka had to restrain Naruto from mauling the boy that tried to get her to wear a sexy nurse outfit. Thankfully, she managed to pull him to the next stand before he killed someone, but unfortunately, the president of the photography club suffered some bruising and scrapes around his neck. Honestly, Naruto-kun, what am I going to do with you? The pink-haired vampire asked her whiskered blonde crush. The blonde simply shrugged and interlocked his hands behind his head when a certain blue-haired girl wrapped her arms around his neck and jumped onto his back, making his arms go to his side to support her shapely legs. The girl's impressive bust pressed into his back and Naruto's face turned a light shade of red when she leaned forward and whispered into his ear. "Where have you been hiding, Naruto-koi?" Well, hi Kurumu-chan. Naruto sputtered out as she teased him by nibbling on his earlobe. Kurumu kissed his neck softly, making the blonde go rigid as he froze in place and making Moka grind her teeth in annoyance. "Get off of Naruto-kun, Kurumu," Moka growled. Kurumu scowled at the pinkette, but got off him all the same. Before Naruto could feel any safer, Kurumu grabbed his arm and pulled it between her breasts. "Naruto-koi," she whined slightly with a pout, "come join the cooking club with me." Well, I promised Moka that we'd be in a club together," Naruto said, slightly nervous. He honestly didn't want to inadvertently start another fight between the girls, mainly because of all the boys now leering in their direction and glaring in his. Kurumu scowled at the triumphant-looking Moka before grinning and looking at Naruto. "Good, then you both can join me in cooking club," she said. Naruto face-palmed while Moka glared at her. They had found out last night when they decided to make dinner together that Moka can't cook anything. Kurumu teased her about it for a while as they waited for the pizza they ordered to arrive before Naruto made her stop. Before Moka could attack the succubus and form a crowd, Naruto stepped in and said, or, we can all find a club together, one that we're all good at, one like a swimming club?" Naruto asked as he found himself standing in front of a booth with a bikini-clad girl standing behind it. Moka was frowning while Kurumu was grinning from ear to ear. The blue-haired girl had dragged them to this club mainly because of two things. 1. She wanted Naruto to see her in a bikini, and 2. She wanted to see Naruto in a speedo. A devious plan indeed. "I don't think we should join this club," Moka said quietly. Before Naruto could agree with her, the girl behind the counter spoke up. She was quite beautiful, almost as equally beautiful as Moka or Kurumu if Naruto had to be honest. Her light ocean blue hair fell behind her in a straight manner, leaving her almost model-like face open for the world to see. But we don't have a lot of boys in our club," she pouted, leaning over the counter with her head in her hands. "What's your name, cutie?" "I am Ichino's Tamao, current recruiter of the girls' swimming club." Kurumu's smile immediately fell and she grabbed onto Naruto's arm. "Come on, Naruto-koi, let's find another club." Tamao scowled as the two girls lead the whiskered blonde away. He really was intriguing to her, what with not wearing school uniform but a slightly fitting mesh shirt underneath a white shirt and a torn school jacket. She really liked his eyes though, blue, her favorite color, with 3 small commas swirling around his pupils. It was so exotic. "Maybe I can corner him later today," the girl thought as she turned her charm on another group of boys, "and maybe he'd be better off not joining the club." "This looks promising," Moka mused as she stopped outside her homeroom. There were newspapers posted all over the chalkboard on the wall outside the door. Naruto, who was stuck between the two girls, both had their arms around his and were pressing his arms into their cleavages, was thinking about a club he had walked over to while leaving a buncheon to help Kurumu and Moka find a club for the three of them, the Monstars Club. The guy recruiting had shown him a lot that pissed him off and a lot that infuriated him, 2 very different feelings. "For once, Moka, you're right," Kurumu said with a smile as she looked up at the quiet Naruto. "Don't you think so, Naruto-koi?" Naruto didn't reply as he thought about what the wyvern, who ironically was named Vern, said about the school. The student police committee was corrupt and arresting innocents because rich students paid them off, or high-ranking officials didn't approve of hybrid monsters being smart. It disgusted him and he asked Vern where he could sign up. Technically, it's not a club. They're more along the lines of a gang, so he was told to wait until the next day. They were a legal gang, but a gang nonetheless. He was told the SPC couldn't shut them down, despite constant attempts, because the headmaster backed them in their goals, or so he had said he did. "Naruto-kun?" Moka asked, concerned for her crush as he was more reserved than usual. Naruto shook himself from his thoughts and looked at the two girls. "What did I miss?" he asked them. They both sighed before smiling at him, finding his odd confused state adorable. "Gaine-san, please leave, now," Nekonome's voice came from the classroom. They all turned to see a rather handsome black-haired boy leave the classroom with a scowl and walk down the opposite way they were. Stopping at the photography club and smiling, Naruto, Moka, and Kurumu walked into the classroom to see Nekonome sitting with her head in her hands, her ears flat against her head and her tail down in a droop. "Sensei?" Naruto asked, stepping forward and out of the girl's hold. Nekonome's ears perked up and she looked up to see the three. She smiled. "Oh, hello, Uzumaki-kun," she said, her voice sounding slightly depressed. "I am sorry, but you've caught me at a bad time." So, we can't sign up for the newspaper club? Naruto asked with a frown. Damn. Why you want to join the newspaper club? The cat girl asked with her tail waving slowly and her ears fully perked up as a smile came over her face. Naruto grinned. Yeah, he said, I mean, it's open, right? Investigative journalism seems right for me. I've always liked taking photos, Kurumu mused with a smile. Moka smiled as well and put her hands behind her as she said, and I am somewhat of a perfectionist, so I could be the editor. So much a perfectionist that it ruins whatever dish you try to cook, the blue-haired girl muttered, earning a glare from the pink-haired girl. I don't know what to say, the teacher said with a smile. Oh, thank you. Why? Naruto asked as he sat on a desk. We're students that want to join a club. You're a teacher that happens to need students for her club. It's just a normal occurrence, right? Nekonomiya smiled and clapped her hands together. Let's get you all started then. Moka sighed as she edited the story Nekonomiya-sensei had given her concerning the brown-haired boy that had left earlier. His name was Morioka Gaine. He was a werewolf and apparently a pervert, hence why he was kicked out of the club. Nekonomiya had no choice but to kick him off when he came forward with his admittance to being a pervert, something that made Kurumu's nose crinkle with disgust. She sighed again and put the pencil in her hand to the side of the desk before looking out the window. Kurumu was working on something for the cooking club to get a story started for her small cooking with Kurumu section, and Naruto had gone missing shortly after his trip to the bathroom. The pinkette was now sitting in her dorm room wondering why she even agreed to be the editor of the club. Her thoughts were interrupted when a certain blue-haired girl busted through her door. Kurumu, what are you? Her question was cut off as the busty succubus grabbed her arm and pulled her from her chair. No time. Naruto-koi's in trouble, the blue-haired girl said as she transformed into her true state and threw the pinkette's window open. She grabbed Moka's arms and flew out the window, carrying her as she flew quickly. What do you mean? Moka asked. Kurumu didn't look at her, only managing to scowl. I saw that swimming club bitch asking Nekonomiya-sensei about him, the girl replied. Moka blinked and then shouted up at the succubus for her to hurry up. Moka told herself she wouldn't let anyone take Naruto from her, and she meant it. Naruto didn't even know how he got into this mess. All he knows is that after becoming the official #1 of the Monstars, lowest number is lowest rank, oddly enough, he was cornered by Tamao, the swimming club recruiter. She asked if he wanted to join her club again. Frowning when he told her he joined a different club, she perked up when she discovered he was a journalist for the paper and offered to become his first interview. It was when he agreed that it all went south. Are you sure I have to wear a bathing suit? Naruto asked as he looked at the different male trunks that were on the wall of the swimming club's gear shed. Tamao pouted. Well, you want to be comfortable when you interview me, right? Well yeah, but the blue-haired girl smiled. Then just grab one so we can start the interview. Naruto sighed and grabbed a pair of trunks that were dark blue and had orange stripes down the side. Tamao smiled and pushed him into the changing room, where he did as the room was named after. Before coming back out in his white shirt, trunks, and sandals, he had sealed his other clothes into his left arm with a quick use of his blood before coming back out. He blinked in confusion when the blue-haired girl just stared at him when he came out, not focusing at all when he waved his hand in front of her. Oh yes. Jackpot. Tamao thought as she saw the whiskered blonde walk out of the changing room. Look at those arms. Oh how I can't wait to get him out of that shirt and into the hot tub. I wonder what type of monster he is. I hope he's not an orc or troll. Well, wait. He can't be with those eyes. Ooh, what if our babies have his eyes? Tamao-san? Naruto asked, using her name and snapping her from her thoughts. Where to? Tamao smiled and grabbed the whiskered blonde's arm before dragging him with her to the hot tub. When they entered the room where the hot tub was, she smiled and sauntered into the hot tub, her legs transforming into a fishtail and her ears changing into fin-like appendages. Naruto instantly thought of a distant memory of a girl much like himself named Izrabi. A mermaid, he said quietly, a small amount of awe in his voice. Tamao smiled seductively up at him and waited in the hot tub. Heard of us? The blue-haired girl asked. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and smiled sheepishly. Got my first kiss from a girl that was like a mermaid. Score. He's tasted maiden lips. This is going to be easier than I thought, Tamao thought with a small smile. Well, wanna come join me in here and we can talk? Why not? Naruto said with a shrug, not getting the hidden message the mermaid added. He set the notebook he unsealed from his right arm down on his side before taking his shirt off and setting it aside. Tamao's eyes glazed over as she looked at his defined body. My god. She thought as he stepped into the hot tub, I see why he had Akashi and Kiron hanging off of him like that. I mean look at him. He's got to be a demigod or something. Wonder if either of the two girls left their mark on him yet. Bah, who cares? He's mine now. So how do you want to go about this? Naruto asked the mermaid, unaware of her plotting mind. He slowly became aware when Tamao wrapped her tail around his waist and sat on his lap. The blonde was thrown another curveball when the mermaid leaned into his neck and took in a large inhale of breath. So unbelievably young and strong, Tamao said in a breathy voice as her hands started dancing over his shoulders. Naruto was frozen now. The blood was rushing from his main brain to his male one, and he was doing everything in his power to stop it. While Tamao kept exploring his developed upper torso, Naruto stared blankly ahead while a single thought continued to go through his mind in an effort to stop the inevitable erection that was slowly making itself known. Arrow Sennin naked, Arrow Sennin naked, Arrow Sennin naked, Arrow Sennin naked, Arrow oh, hey that felt really good, Naruto thought when Tamao ran her fingers over his pectoral muscles. A subtle twitch in his lower region snapped him from his short daze and he thought, no, bad Naruto. Arrow Baka. Focus. Arrow Sennin naked, Arrow Sennin naked. Tamao smiled at the zoned-out blonde, finding his trembling and frozen look adorable. His comma-filled eyes were swirling slowly, making the mermaid lick her lips in anticipation. Tamao relaxed and allowed the heated waters to fully affect her, making her tail transform back into the bikini-bottom-clad lower half that she had before, the only difference now being small fins protruding from the back of her ankles. Her legs wrapped around Naruto's waist and she ground her hips against his own, gasping when something pressed against her nether regions. Naruto was now trembling in fear, anticipation, excitement, arousal, and exhaustion. He knew what the mermaid wanted now, and he was not prepared in any way to deny her advances. The toad-eyed blonde prayed to the higher entities above to save himself from being injured for acting like a pervert. His prayers were answered when the door busted open with Kurumu and Moka kicking the door open. Tamao growled at the intrusion while Naruto allowed his head to roll back as he thanked the universe. Leave my Naruto-koi alone, bitch! Kurumu shrieked, transforming into her full succubus state and leaping at the mermaid while Moka helped Naruto get out of the hot tub. Naruto rested his cheek against the concrete ground and relished in the cold feeling of it, helping him relax from his arousal. Moka looked up just before Kurumu was thrown into her and Naruto was separated from the calming ground, making him pout, as Tamao grabbed him by the shoulders. Tamao grinned from behind the whiskered blonde at the two groaning girls while she pulled Naruto towards the hot tub. Feeling rather pleased with herself, Tamao gloated, you two tried so hard, didn't you? All for naught. He's mine now and I can tell hell survived the mating swim. The what now? Naruto repeated in confusion while Kurumu and Moka snapped their heads up with a wince as they exclaimed simultaneously, no. Yes. Tamao said with glee as she prepared to throw Naruto into the warm waters. When she did throw him, Naruto decided against becoming a personal fuck toy for the strange mermaid, and landed with chakra covering his feet, allowing him to stand on the water. Tamao looked at the blonde with wide eyes and she whispered, what? How are you not in the water? How do you stand on it? Naruto grinned and tapped the side of his nose, trade secret. The mermaid growled and leapt at him, tackling him from the hot tub to the nearby pool. When they were in the colder water, Tamao transformed from the more beautiful state she was in before to a ferocious shark-like mermaid. Her teeth and claws now razor sharp and her eyes were slitted in anger and frustration of having her mating swim interrupted. She watched with a growl as Naruto shot up from the water with a gasp and climbed onto its surface as though it was land. The blonde stood on the water, panting slightly as the pool was deeper than it looked. The whiskered boy yelped and leapt over the mermaid as she swam at him, attempting to grab his ankles from underwater. Why do you defy me? Tamao asked with a growl, am I not desirable? Would you not want me as a mate? Tamao-san, Naruto said with a deadpan voice, I am only 16, I do not want to be tied down just yet. It is not your decision anymore. The mermaid shouted before swimming at him again. Naruto yelped and ran towards the land where Moka and Kurumu were watching with worry etched on their features. The toad-eyed teen leapt for the land when his ankle was grabbed by the ocean blue-haired girl. He flailed in midair before Moka grabbed his arms, starting a tug-of-war between the two girls with Naruto as the rope. Kurumu latched onto Moka's waist in an effort to help her destined one and rival. Release him. He is mine, Tamao snarled, either as my mate or as my meal, but he is mine nonetheless. Naruto looked back at the crazed mermaid before looking back at Moka, with slight effort on his part. Naruto reached up and grabbed the rosary around Moka's neck. With a reassuring wink to the pinkhead, Naruto pinched Moka's arm, making her yelp in pain before she released him. Tamao pulled Naruto into the water with great force, causing the rosary in Naruto's hand to snap off of Moka's neck. Kurumu yelped and released Moka, jumping back to avoid being hit by the energy she released as she reverted to her true form. The silver-haired vampire looked around before looking at the water and seeing Naruto rush to his feet while on the water and barely avoid the swipe made at his legs by the mermaid. Moka narrowed her eyes, watching the blonde as he ran across the surface of the water, trying to make sense of what he was doing. You gonna just stand there or you gonna help me? Naruto yelped as he was narrowly bitten on the behind. Tamao snarled and chased the blonde as he ran in a zigzag pattern across the surface of the pool. Moka scoffed and shook her head. I would normally just allow this to continue, but I do wish for answers as to how you were walking on water. She looked at the blue-haired Succubus and spoke with authority in her voice. Succubus, fly over the pool and get that buffoon before he trips and drowns himself. I am not a buffoon, Naruto shouted as he ran across the water, stumbling for a moment but recovering in record time. He looked back at the white-haired vampire that was looking at him with a small, smug smile on her face. The blonde blushed in embarrassment and anger as he ran before shouting, I stumbled, not tripped. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Moka muttered before looking back at the Succubus. Well. Oh, right, Kurumu replied sheepishly before flying over the pool and grabbing Naruto's outstretched hand. She groaned with effort as she carried the blonde to the surface, dropping next to him when she was sure they were safe. The blue-haired Succubus looked at the tomoed blonde that was catching his breath and said, Naruto Koi, you gotta lay off the ramen. Tamao shrieked in frustration of being robbed of her prospective mate or meal. She grabbed her hair as she shrieked, looking back at the smug vampire on the other edge. With narrowed eyes she swam towards the vampire with impressive speed before suddenly turning to the right and dousing the silver-haired girl in water. It was a little-known fact that vampires were weakened by water. Most humans believing it had to be blessed water only. This misconception was brought about during the first few years of Count Dracula's rule in Transylvania. A traveling monk had come across the Count as he fed off the carcass of a deceased calf. This was when he tried to regain a hold on his humanity. Disgusted and horrified, the monk said a quick prayer before grabbing his only possession. A canteen with a cross made of metal attached to it. Before throwing its contents at the Count, Dracula shrieked and reverted to his true form, fleeing the scene clumsily before more pain could be bestowed upon him. The monk believed it to be the work of the cross outside of the canteen, not once believing the simple combination of hydrogen and oxygen atoms was the cause of the Count's pain. The Count would be known as a disgrace to the vampire race for revealing their true weakness to humans, even if the apes had gotten it wrong. Moka hacked violently on the water, feeling rather sick as it went down her throat. The silver-haired vampire groaned as she began to feel weak from the water seeping into her skin. She looked across the way to see Naruto standing to his feet and looking back at her. Before he could say anything, Tamao swam by again, sending a large amount of water at the vampire, causing her to shriek in pain and fall to her knees. What's wrong, vampire? Don't want to swim? Tamao taunted as Moka curled up on her knees, hacking violently. The mermaid continued her verbal assault. I thought only holy water was your weakness. What is she talking about? Naruto asked Kurumu as they rushed around the side of the pool, being sure to keep their distance. The Succubus looked back at her destined one with slight surprise. Vampires are weak against water and any type of monster that dwells in it, she explained. Monsters have residue of where they're from in their blood. Naruto recalled Moka's complaining about what monster he was and the sentence referring to his being water-based. She said she would have felt sick. The blonde's eyes widened in realization as he also threw in what Kurumu was saying. He had to get to Moka now or she'd undoubtedly drown as Tamao kept barraging her with large waves of water. Raising his hands up in the tiger seal, Naruto cried out, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Instantly, 6 more Narutos appeared in puffs of smoke. Kurumu froze in her spot, staring at all the shirtless, slightly wet blondes that stood before her. She passed out with a massive nosebleed as a rather nasty thought concerning all of them, her, and her bedroom entered the young Succubus' mind. 3 of you grab Moka-san and get her away from the pool, the original Naruto instructed. The rest of us surrounded and ready the birds. Hi, boss. The clones shouted as one before they leapt off to do as they were instructed. 3 clones helped Moka move away from the water before 2 used a light food technique to help dry her off. The silver-haired Moka looked around in shock as she found herself surrounded by 3 duplicates of the whiskered blonde. The remaining others all leapt into action around the pool, making Tamao freeze in shock of being surrounded by the many duplicates of the blonde. They all performed many hand seals before soft chirping came from their hands as lightning covered them. The original smiled at Tamao sadly as her eyes widened in fear. I am sorry about this, Tamao-san, Naruto said before he and his clones shoved their hands into the water, the original exclaiming, Judori. Tamao convulsed for 30 seconds before she floated to the surface. Her eyes shut and her breathing labored. The clones all vanished with small puffs of smoke and the original walked onto the surface to where Tamao lay unconscious. The tomoed blonde carefully picked the mermaid up from her spot in the water, carrying her bridal style. He walked towards the silver-haired Moka, the rosary in her hand and Kurumu on her left. The Succubus' scheming mind was fully active. wondering exactly what his clones could be used for aside from fighting. What was that, Uzumaki? Moka demanded, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. Naruto grinned at her foxily, his tomoed eyes swirling slowly. A specialty of mine, Naruto replied nonchalantly. Moka narrowed her eyes even further and then looked at the girl in his arms with a scowl as she crossed her arms over her chest. And what do you plan to do with her? Moka asked. Ravage her body as a prize. Naruto looked appalled at the insinuation and he spat at the vampire's feet. Moka growled at him for the show of disrespect, stopping when he spoke in a threatening tone. I know better than to take advantage of girls. Damn it, my village has numerous raped women, and the crime was punishable by death if one ever attempted it, so no, Moka-san, I am not going to ravage her body as a prize. Now if you'd put the damn rosary back on and go the fuck away, I'd be very grateful. You do not boss me around, Uzumaki, Moka snarled, taking a step towards him. She froze as his tomos suddenly spun quickly in a blur. The vision within them was clear and made the prideful vampire swallow in fear as she trembled. What he had showed her with that small gaze frightened the normally hostile vampire. A feat of its own. The vision he showed her was a rape victim recovery office through his own eyes as he comforted a girl with buns in her hair with the help of a bowl-cut-haired boy. A pale-eyed effeminate-looking boy was clenching and unclenching his fists. If you ever insinuate that again, Moka-san, I will find a way to seal you for good. Naruto threatened gravely. To get his message across, the silver-haired girl trembled even more from the threat. Finding excitement in his threat, what was even stranger was she became slightly aroused from it. Naruto paid no heed to the shocked blue-haired succubus or the slightly excited vampire, continuing instead to the nurse's office. He was unaware that the girl in his arms was still conscious enough to hear his words, nor was he aware that she would continue to chase him along with Kurumu and Moka, both of her personas for reasons of their own. The inner Moka wished to know how he was so strong while the outer simply wished to know exactly what Naruto was. Naruto walked down the hallways towards the old gymnasium. He had left with the excuse of having to use the bathroom. He did send a bunch back so as not to seem suspicious. The tomoed blonde closed the door behind him and turned around to see a green-haired boy about a foot shorter than him standing before him. Were ye followed? The green-haired boy asked as his hazel eyes darted around. Naruto shook his head and he continued. Good lad. I be Mac. Bine a leprechaun is me game. So don't be mackin' any cracks about me accent, y'all get me? Naruto nodded and Mac smiled, revealing a pair of gold canines on the top row of his teeth. Good ta know. Follow me then, boyo. Mac led Naruto to the crumbling rock wall before stopping and looking back at the whiskered blonde. Quietly he said, remember this once, boyo, 'cause I'll never show it to ye again. Naruto nodded and Mac turned back to the rock wall. He grabbed a red rock, twisted it 180 degrees to the left before grabbing a green one and turning it to the right 45 degrees. Finally, he grabbed the yellow rock and pulled it out before pushing it back in. A click went off and the rock wall shifted backwards before sliding into the wall. Naruto grinned in approval while walking in behind the shorter boy. The rock wall moving back into place behind them, they walked down a dark and dank hallway for a while before they came to a large set of wooden doors. Mac opened them and 4 boys were in the room on the other side. They were all wearing school uniforms, modified of course to look a lot like the Chunin vest his sensei used to wear. Only without scroll carriers. Basically they were forest green leather vests with the school insignia on the left side. Naruto had noticed the back of Mac's vest had 4 religious symbols he had seen while training with Jiraiya. An ancient circle that was divided into 4 sections with a noticeable cross being formed underneath a 6-pointed star that had a smaller normal pentagram within it while a crescent was at the top of the 3 shapes, making it seem as though there were horns on the formed shape. The tallest and biggest of them had white hair and a pale complexion. His eyes were a dark black, a solid contrast to his hair and skin complexion. He was leaning against what looked like a bar, a bottle of some kind of drink in his hands. He took a sip of his drink and continued to look at the whiskered blonde. Mac gestured to him and said, that be Blitz, our resident yeti. He be the quiet type, and yet his girl be the most beautiful siren ye ever did see of the 3rd year. Shut up, Mac, Blitz replied before he took another drink of what was now easily seen to be a Coca-Cola. Mac then gestured to the second tallest boy with a blue tattoo on his shaved head that looked similar to a serrated arrow. He wore only the modified school vest with a black tank top underneath it and shredded jeans. Mac introduced him. That's Draco. 3 guesses as to what type of monster he be and I'll tell ye this. He ain't no fairy. I am a dragon, Draco said quietly as his nostrils flared and smoke exhaled from them. I am also in command. Naruto nodded his understanding and Mac gestured to the familiar blue-haired teen that was sitting on the wall. Ye already know our recruiter Vern. Vern looked up from his writing down on the clipboard in his hand and nodded to the blonde before hopping from one wall to the other and examining the vent with a small machine. Naruto watched with curiosity before Mac directed his attention to the last person. He was skinny, scary skinny. Bone was visible, and his skin was pale. That there be Tommy Rawhead, Mac said with a smile. He be our new information boy, first year like yourself. He's a boogeyman. He, like yourself, is a Monstars probie. Hey, call me Rawhead, Rawhead said with a slight Scottish accent and ghostly voice as he waved. Naruto grinned back and held his hand out. Naruto, you're in my chem class, right? Naruto asked. Rawhead nodded. Aye, the boogeyman replied in his ghostly voice. Ye be the one that blew the stink bomb. Naruto grinned. Word gets around. Okay, enough with the reunion, Draco said as he pushed himself off the wall. We lost about 3 people due to graduation last year. All we have now are us, right now. I am going to tell you this group isn't fun and games. We're going to destroy the SPC and anyone else that threatens the student body. Isn't that what the SPC does? Rawhead asked, tilting his head slightly. Draco shook his head. No, the dragon started. The SPC is complicated. We're clear, boss, Vern said as he dropped from the ceiling. No wires, cameras, spy gear, monsters, ghouls, ghosts, or spells. Tell him. Draco nodded and turned to the two. With a gravely serious voice, he said, the SPC is corrupt. As you know, recently, they paid off the last member of the newspaper club off to come clean about his nature to the head of the club and got rid of him. He was our old informant as to what was going on around the school. He was instantly accepted by the photography club. Naruto swallowed, concerned for his friend's own safety, but remained quiet as Draco continued. The SPC don't care about the student body. They care for themselves and the school's secret remaining that way. They also only care about delivering their own type of justice, and that's exact definition is determined by Kuyo. That is wrong on so many levels, Rawhead said with a shake of his head. You have no idea, Vern spat out from his spot. Naruto and Rawhead looked at the wyvern to see him clenching his fists. The SPC capture students that they believe to be threats to the school. No one sees them ever again after that. Vern walked away after that, disappearing into a room with the number 3 carved into it. The two newbies looked at Draco and saw him rubbing the back of his head. With a sigh, Draco said, his stepsister, Mira, was taken last year by the SPC. When she was returned at the year's break, she was instantly hospitalized and currently she's just starting to show signs of movement in her legs. Naruto ground his teeth and Rawhead narrowed his eyes. The two exchanged a look before looking back at Draco. The dragon grinned as the two probies were tossed a vest each. Both of them put their vests on before looking back at Draco. The dragon pulled a cigarette out and blew fire onto it before shoving it in his mouth and smirked at them. By the way, welcome to Yokai, Draco said, his fanged teeth glinting in the sunlight. Flashback and Uzumaki-kun. The nurse spoke, earning the blonde's and the girl's attention. Your friend is fine, just unconscious. She is awake now, so you can come in if you'd like. Naruto smiled. Thank you, Nurse-san. The nurse smiled at his politeness. Feel free to call me Tsunade-san, Uzumaki-kun. Naruto's jaw dropped and his eye widened as the nurse, now ironically known as Tsunade, walked away from the room and the two girls with Naruto looked at him as he sat frozen with a gaping mouth and twitching eyes. No, fucking way, he drew out before collapsing in a fit of laughs. When the blue-eyed boy regained control of himself, Naruto went into Tamao's room, Kurumu and Moka following quickly to keep an eye on the mermaid that had tried to kill him. Still snickering over the irony, Naruto gave a very apologetic-looking Tamao a large grin, his good mood now dominating his person. Ohio, Tamao-chan. He greeted, unknowingly giving the girl that had tried to kill him and his friends a seemingly affectionate suffix, upsetting the two girls standing behind him. Tsunade-san said you weren't fried. Hi, Tamao replied with a slight twitch and a nod. Her look suddenly turned somber and she looked down at her hands, fidgeting with her sheet and chewing on her bottom lip. Naruto recalled exactly why he had to have 3 clones and himself use the Judori and he went back to his original state, upset. So, wanna tell me why you tried to rape then kill me? Naruto asked, arching a brow before gesturing with his thumb to Kurumu. I mean, Kurumu-chan tried to hypnotize me and even got into a scuffle with Moka-chan that I had to break up, more than once. Tamao failed to come up with any words so Naruto continued, crossing his arms over his chest, his hand resting on the invisible seal that held his Monstars vest. Listen, he said, moving a hand to rub his temple, if you want, I can ask Moka and Kurumu to leave and you can tell me yourself. No. The two in question shouted immediately, both locking glares on the girl trying to steal their man. They hadn't fully forgiven the blue-haired girl for trying to claim Naruto as her own. Quiet, Naruto growled, his tomos spinning wildly as he glanced at Moka and then Kurumu before looking back at Tamao with irritation written on his face. Or I can introduce you to my happy place. Kurumu and Moka collectively shuddered in fear, both wrapping their arms around themselves as they recalled his happy place. There was nothing happy about the Tsukuyomi realm he dragged them to. Heck, the place had become the background of many nightmares they had. When they weren't dreaming about their favorite blonde, that is. I am tired of being alone, Tamao whispered, bringing her knees to rest under her chin as she wrapped her arms around her legs. Being a mermaid isn't fun. Our mates usually die during our consummation and we usually feed by either draining young men of their youth or eating fish. The swimming club feed on the former, don't they? Naruto deducted, earning a nod from Tamao as she looked away in shame, and he continued with a dark, talk about ruining an image. And I don't want to do it. Tamao choked out as tears began to fall. And my mother raised me too, but they said, I had to or I'll never be happy. Hey, the blonde quietly said, cautiously sitting at her side on the bed and placing a friendly arm around her shoulders. It's okay, Tamao-chan, we understand, right? Yeah, I mean, Moka sucks Naruto Koi's blood all the time and he doesn't care, Kurumu said somewhat cheerfully. Naruto and Moka sweat dropped while Tamao looked up with teary eyes at the blonde on her right. Really? She asked, sniffling cutely before continuing. I mean, they said if I ever tried to leave the club, they'd kill me. They actually said that? Moka gasped out while Naruto's eyes narrowed before he asked Tamao to elaborate and tell him everything about this club. He hated them more and more as she quietly told them about the swimming club's activities. These girls were in their own little cult, threatening the members with death and kidnapping boys, or tricking them into joining, and practicing manslaughter on a daily basis. Tamao was still a feeding virgin as the members called it, thankfully having no previous meal as she was a new member, immediately signed up upon her arrival to the school. Naruto stood when she finished, his tomos slowly spinning as he kept a calm face. The three girls all looked at him in concern and he walked to the door, pausing and turning around before opening the door. Naruto raised his hand to his face and bit the tip of his thumb off before falling into a series of hand signs. When he finished, he slammed his hand into the ground and exclaimed, Kuchiyose no Jutsu. A large blue toad about the size of the bed Tamao rested on, its body patterns being similar to a rainforest's poison dart frog and the secondary colors being a dark navy blue. The girls also took notice of the excessive amount of armor on its arms, head, chest and back. The armor looked reminiscent to a samurai's while being a dark coal color. Naruto-san, the toad said with a nod. Naruto looked at the toad. No one but myself or a clone of me enters or leaves for any reason, not even the nurse, he ordered. The toad nodded his understanding and Naruto looked past him to the girls within. I'll be back shortly, don't try and get past Gamabugyo. He's very obedient when a Gama Kuzaha gives him an order, right, Bugyo-san? Hi, Naruto-san. Gamabugyo replied with a nod. Naruto nodded back and walked out the door, not waiting to hear the girl's efforts at a rebuttal. What he was going to do would be illegal on many grounds, and he didn't want any of them, Tamao included, to be at risk from his rash actions. Who are you? A girl with green hair and an even tan asked him as he stood outside of the main pool in the bathing suit he had chosen when Tamao first grabbed him. Tamao-chan told me to come here at 5 for some swimming lessons, he replied, faking a blush as his hanged blue eyes looked down at his feet in mock embarrassment. He could practically feel her soak in his adorable kit look that his sensei had named during their travels. Jiraiya had forced him to use it often when he went cheap on the blonde and Naruto had to beg for money. Ah, poor thing, the green-haired girl cooed, come on in, I'll teach you how to swim. She grabbed his wrist before he could refuse her offer and turned around, dragging him towards the pool. She didn't notice the small smile on his face as she dragged him inside. Please? Moka tried again to plead with the toad, the blue being refused to budge, however, his loyalty to his summoner overriding the cute faces he was faced against. Naruto-san's word is law, Gamabugyo said with a small croak afterwards, and I don't break the law, brace yourselves. For wa? Tamao asked quietly when a loud group shriek echoed through the school grounds. A few patients recovering from Ichino's rampage woke up due to the shriek, each one wondering why they were in the infirmary. Naruto returned only an hour after he had left, a slight pant in his breathing the only evidence of his exhausting activity, whatever it was exactly. He dismissed Gamabugyo and took all three girls back to their respective rooms, being sure to take Moka back to her room last so she could get a light snack before bed. The hour after he left, 15 girls, all members of the swimming club, were admitted to the infirmary. They were convulsing with electric shocks time and time again. Tsunade would complain later that night to a fellow nurse that it smelled like fried fish in the infirmary because of the new patients the PSC brought in. The next day had brought surprise after surprise for the newspaper club. Tamao had signed up first thing during her free period and leapt onto Naruto, earning very displeased shrieks from both Kurumu and Moka. The three then got into a small fisticuffs, enjoyed by Naruto for a moment before he assisted Nekonomi's-sensei with separating them via cage bunshin. Now, 2 weeks later, the girls' rivalry for his heart, or insane stamina, Naruto wasn't sure which of the two they were after anymore, wasn't the problem. Naruto's right eye twitched as he saw the perverted boy known as Gaine squatting outside of the women's bath with a camera in hand. Now, the reason he was back there was legit. He was going to drop a small smoke bomb in the showers, of both genders mind you, but now, a favorite pastime of his came back to the forefront of his mind. Bust the peak. The concept is simple enough. Do something to alert the pervert's presence to the ones being peeped on and then enjoy as the perv is harmed. Hot damn, those are huuuuuuuge. Naruto suddenly shouted before shining away, his cry earning the attention of the women being peeped on. They all saw a glare reflecting through the small window from where Gaine was peeping and they all reacted any sane woman would. They screamed and attacked. Naruto grinned as he watched from above as Gaine began trying to defend his actions while the girls cracked their knuckles or began changing into their true forms. He pulled his camera out and began taking pictures. He could already read the next headline for his next article. Beware this pervert. Naruto-kun. Moka cried in joy as the blonde walked towards the picnic table they often sat at. Hey, Moka-chan. Naruto replied with a wave as he tucked his camera into a hidden pouch with an expansion seal he added into his Monstars vest. Speaking of said vest, it didn't take long for the pink-haired vampire to notice his recent modification to his school attire. Where'd you get the vest, Naruto-kun? Moka asked as the blonde sat next to her. He asked, arching a brow before he realized what she had asked, and he replied, oh, yeah, I took it from a supply closet? Naruto-kun. Moka sighed out as she held her head in slight annoyance before giving the blonde a pleading look. If I don't tell anyone, can I have a drink? I don't care if you tell anyone, Moka-chan, Naruto said with a shrug, and why didn't ya just? Before he could finish, the pink-haired girl wrapped her arms around his shoulders and bit into his neck from behind. The tomoed blonde winced at the awkward bite position before tilting his head slightly and relaxing. It was when the two voices proclaiming their disapproval hit his ears, did he get a feeling of dread about how this day was going to turn out. Get off my destined one, Moka, Kurumu growled as she approached, her eye twitching in annoyance as she watched Moka drink from Naruto's neck in a slightly erotic position. You wish he was your destined one, Succubus, Tamao muttered with a glare from the corner of her eyes before looking back at the annoyed vampire that had finished drinking but remained where she was. And you better watch yourself, Akashi-san. My mate is not your personal blood bank. Your mate? The busty blue-haired girl growled, her hand clutching tightly on the table's edge. You tried to eat him. I said I was sorry. The mermaid shot back before looking at Moka as she moved back to sit next to the blonde apologetically. And I am also sorry for almost drowning you. There, I said it. Barely, Naruto thought before giving Moka a nudge in the side. I think that's fair, second chance? Moka remained quiet for a moment before sighing and giving her response, fine, but only because Naruto-kun thinks you deserve it. Works for me, Tamao exclaimed with a grin, quickly appearing on the blonde's lap, her unbuttoned white blouse revealing her bikini-clad assets and her school uniform skirt falling to the middle of her thighs. Naruto's face flushed dark red and the two girls also grit their teeth in annoyance. What's on the schedule for today, Naru-kun? Tamao cooed. Lightly running her finger along his left top whisker mark, Moka and Kurumu felt their jaws drop when Naruto's eyes instantly drooped and he released a small rumble that could be described as a purr. Intrigued, the mermaid ran her fingers over another whisker mark, earning another drawn-out purr and causing Naruto's eyes to shut. Tamao continued to happily run her fingers across the whisker marks on the blonde's cheeks, causing him to rest his head on her shoulder and purr in content. Kawaii, Kurumu exclaimed, suddenly appearing at Naruto's side and shoving Tamao onto Moka before taking the mermaid's spot and petting him similar to how her fellow blue-haired friend did. Before long, Moka had done as she did and began petting Naruto in her stead. The pink-haired vampire was smiling as she gave some sort of pleasure back to the boy she felt strong feelings for. Before long, however, the bell rang again and they reluctantly ran off to get to class, Moka and Tamao being sensible enough to drag a barely stirring Naruto along with them, only for them to discover an upcoming quarter test that counted for a grand portion of their final grade for that semester. The blonde male with them sweated slightly in nervousness alongside the succubus that clung to his right arm. Neither were exactly the best when it came to Nekonomi's-sensei's class. Naruto because he didn't see the need to blend in with human society, because he was partially one, and Kurumu because, well, They say some girls either have beauty or brains, don't they? Or does that apply to blondes and blue-haired girls only? This, however, wasn't Naruto's main concern. No, the main concern was standing in front of him with an adorable pout on her face. Do you want to study with me, Naruto-kun? Moka asked with a small blush and a forced puppy dog look. Cursing whatever god created such a face, Naruto grinned foxily. Sure thing, Moka-chan. The blonde said with a grin. The two girls also with him scowled and glared at the beaming pinkette, causing the toad-eyed boy to internally question his sexuality for his moral code's self-destruction due to the catfight that would come from this. But I need Naruto-koi to help me with my studying, Kurumu whined. You do not, slut, Tamao hissed, wrapping her arms around Naruto's free arm and pouting up at him. But I do. The swim club kept me from class time and time again. Please help me, Naru-kun. Now faced with three options, Naruto mentally activated his Tsukuyomi technique on himself to think about a proper response. First outcome. He helps only one of them, causing a catfight and drawing a crowd. Second outcome. He invites them all to his room for a study group and one of them tries to trick the others into not showing up in the next day. Whether he was raped or not, a catfight would ensue. The blonde mused over this before mentally coming up with a plan, and his chibi self began dancing victoriously. He flashed the three of them a grin and freed his arms from Kurumu and Tamao, both pouting upon his action, before he brought his hands up into the tiger seal and he created two duplicates. This way I can study with all of you, he exclaimed, believing this to be an ingenious plan. The drawback he had not foreseen was the sudden arrival of several girls squealing and begging him to be a study buddy, too. Needless to say, a catfight was started then and there outside Nekonomi's classroom, the poor shinobi wallowing mentally as he tried to control the girls and keep the perverts crowding them away. Whoa, what happened Ta Yi, Proby? Mac asked as he appeared at Naruto's side while the blonde grunted and collapsed into a chair with the number 1 on it. I don't want to talk about it, the blonde groaned as he dropped his head onto his arms in an attempt to sleep before he was given an order by his new boss. He looks like a bog had seeped into his room. A bog named woman, Rawhead snickered out as he took a sip of his coffee. Naruto sent the boogeyman a glare through his exhausted eyes and the Scot laughed before continuing. Ya don't like teasing. Then don't go making 15 clones of yourself in front of hormonal and single females. Fuck man, I am the straightest board on the lot and I'd still fuck ya all night long. Faggot. Mac shouted before the two erupted in roars of laughter. A chuckle came from the largest member. Blitz and snickers came from the second smallest, Vern, both earning glares from the blonde. A glass of black liquid was placed before Naruto and he blinked before looking to his right and seeing Draco sitting next to him. Ah, leave him alone, the dragon said, his smile betraying his apparent disapproval of the joke. Poor son of a bitch is being hounded by 3 girls. Add fangirls onto that, and any sane man would turn gay. Not to mention the fact he's blonde, tan, and a very pretty man, Vern chimed, earning even more laughter from the Scot and Irishman spirits. Even Naruto couldn't deny the truth to that sentence and he chuckled before grabbing the glass and taking a sip. Careful, Proby, Blitz warned, earning a glance from the blonde as he casually drank from the glass. Draco's espresso isn't the mildest of drinks. Frostbite me, Yeti, Draco said with a smirk, earning a raised middle finger from the Tibet native. Shaking his head with his smirk still in place, Draco pulled his cigarette out and lit it before his face turned serious, causing all smiles to fall and everyone else to sit up straighter. Word around the school as a half-breed showed up, the bald teen said after exhaling smoke through his nostrils, a witch. Nay. Mac shouted, rising to his feet, where she be from? Blackpool, Archbridge. She's from the States, Mac, Draco said casually, taking another puff of his cancer stick before continuing, smart too, a fucking prodigy. Naruto snorted, had met prodigies before and most of them tended to be stuck-up assholes with sob stories. Hell. The last owner of his eyes was one of the prodigies. Ignoring Naruto's obvious dismissal of his words, Draco continued, anyway, she's only 11. This got everyone's attention, Naruto's included. This was new. She could turn into one of 2 people he knew. A Kakashi or an Itachi. Kakashi, his genin sensei and part-time mentor, was a genius in shinobi ways and became a jonin at 12. Or was it younger than 12? He couldn't remember. Anyway, Kakashi was loyal to a fault and dangerous. But, he wasn't the type of prodigy that went crazy and killed off his whole clan, like Uchiha Itachi did. Naruto shuddered at the brief recollection of the elder brother of his former friend. Their last meeting wasn't pleasant. We're to be her bodyguards then? Vern asked with a scowl, it's her own damn fault for coming to this school. I only need one of you to Draco started when Naruto interrupted, I'll look into it with the newspaper club, got any more backstory for us? She's a witch, What more backstory do you need, Uzumaki? Rawhead asked with an arched brow only to be met with a pair of confused Tomoed eyes. Witches aren't loved here, Naruto, Blitz said quietly, earning the table's attention. Many monsters find them intolerable because of their close relevance to humans, and consequently, monsters view them as inferior and openly ignore their presence. Naruto's eyes flashed to Mangekyo and he stood up and walked to a door with a 1 on it. Before anyone could ask, he looked over his shoulder and said, "I'll deal with this personally. If I need help, I'll let you know." Naruto Koi. A certain busty succubus shouted as she jumped onto his back. The blonde teen stumbled before hooking his arms under her legs and looking back at the sexy succubus with a nervous smile. He had been using his day off of studies to try and find the half-breed he agreed to watch over for the club. So far, his search turned up nothing, aside from the constant denying a date from several older girls that kept approaching him, not to mention he had been reversed summoned for the first time by Fukasaku and offered a chance to train in the Gamma Sennin ways. He said he had to think about it, but Fukasaku said he wanted an answer by the end of the week at the latest before sending the blonde back. Heike Kuru-chan, Naruto greeted kindly, stuttering due to the way the succubus was rubbing her assets against his back. How's it goin'? Great now that I am with you. Kurumu purred before reaching up and running her finger over his whisker mark. The blonde's gaze dimmed and a content purr escaped his throat, making Kurumu giggle with amusement. Taking a chance, Kurumu whispered, "Wanna go study in my room, Koi?" Naruto's response was dazed due to the pleasure he felt when the busty girl ran her finger over his mark again. The succubus smiled as she slid off his back and walked around to wrap her arms around Naruto's neck. "We never get any alone time, Naruto Koi." Kurumu pouted before beaming as Naruto began to snap from his daze. "Let's go on a date tonight." "Awa, no," were the replies to her suggestion. Kurumu cursed under her breath as the 2 other girls aiming for Naruto's heart approached them, scowls on their gorgeous faces. Tamao was the next to divert her attention to the blonde that was still recovering from La La Land and she smiled before attaching herself to his right arm. "Naru-kun," she whined, earning the dazed boy's attention. "Why would you go on a date with that slutty girl and not a woman with athletic skills on par with your own?" "Athletic wa?" Naruto repeated, still trying to regain his bearings when Moka grabbed his left arm and got his attention. The pink-cat vampire gave him her signature puppy dog pout before throwing her own attempt at the blonde. "But I am hungry, Naruto-kun. Can I have a snack?" Moka pleaded. The other 2 glared at her, and if it were possible, the strength of their glares would have melted her into a puddle of goo on the spot. The blonde teen, on the other hand, had recovered as soon as Moka mentioned his name and the word snack. With a reluctant sigh, Naruto tilted his head to the right. "Go yay." Moka's cheer interrupted his reply before she suddenly latched onto his neck. Tamao and Kurumu looked positively livid at her actions, both cursing the pink-haired vampire that seemed to have their destined one, mate to be wrapped around her finger. The blonde however simply stood still and waited for her to finish feeding when his mission returned to his mind. Looking at the 2 blue-haired girls as the vampire fed, he asked, "Hey, do either of you know about a witch at this school? She's supposed to be a prodigy or something." "A witch?" They chorused in confusion. Tamao put an arm under her bikini-clad bust while putting a hand on her chin as she thought and Kurumu closed her eyes tightly while crossing her arms under her own impressive chest, appearing to think about it. At the same time, both girls looked back at a curious Naruto, who still had an occasionally contently sighing Moka latched on his neck with her arms under his and wrapped around his chest as she fed, and said, "You must mean Sendo Yukari." "Sendo Yukari, huh?" Naruto repeated as Moka released his neck and sighed while continuing to hold herself against the blonde. Naruto looked at her over his shoulder and smirked. "Well, thanks for deciding to let me live, Moka-chan." "Oh." Moka blushed in embarrassment as she released the Tomoed-eyed boy and took a step away from him. "Sorry, Naruto-kun. Your blood is just so good. My mother always said your first is delicious, and I am afraid I am addicted to yours." While Naruto silently wondered if having a vampire addicted to your blood was good or a bad thing, Kurumu, whose mind always fell in the gutter, only heard a certain tidbit of Moka's words and angrily proclaimed, "Your first? I said to keep your distance, Akashi." "What?" Moka confusedly asked before she was suddenly attacked by the succubus, being tackled to the ground while Naruto ignored the squabble, knowing that Kurumu wouldn't transform out of fear to be sent to Tsukuyomi by the Tomoed boy, and formed another clone before dispelling it. Tamao, who also was ignoring the small squabble and the constant yelps coming from her adversaries after Naruto's heart, blinked in confusion at the blonde's actions. "Why did you just make another clone, Naru-kun?" Tamao asked curiously while the Tomoed blonde suddenly sat on the ground in a meditative stance. "You'll see," he said mysteriously, gracing her with one of his mischievous grins and unknowingly making her heart pound with it. A moment later, the blonde gasped, hopped back to his feet and ran to the school building before rushing up the side. Tamao's jaw fell as she saw her maid to be run up the building, the action going unnoticed by Kurumu and Moka, the latter now pinning the former and explaining her words as the former began to accept it. While Kurumu apologized, Tamao suddenly helped both girls to their feet and gave Moka a questioning gaze. Moka, confused and slightly intimidated by the gaze, asked, "See, can I help you, Tamao-san? You know what type of monster Naru-kun is, don't you?" Tamao asked with narrowed eyes. Moka blinked and slowly shook her head. Tamao continued to study the girl's face before grabbing her head and groaning in frustration. "The one guy the first no will survive my mating dance and I don't know what type of monster he is," she screamed. The mermaid pouted childishly, puffing her cheeks and crossing her arms before saying, "I hate this school's anti-revealing rule. If it's any consolation, I do know he said he was a type of Hanyu," Moka said, trying to appease the frustrated mermaid. The mermaid did seem to perk up at that. Kurumu finally noticed a certain object of their affection was missing in action. "Hey, where'd Naruto Koi go?" Kurumu asked as she looked around for said blonde. Moka began assisting the succubus in searching for a sight of the boy when Tamao answered the girl's question as to where he had gone. Naru-kun made a clone, dispelled it, and then sat down meditatively, she said, earning her adversary's attention. Then he shot to his feet and ran up that wall. "Ran up the wall?" Kurumu and Moka repeated. Tamao nodded before shrugging and said, "He ran on water, didn't he?" As the three began discussing their new subject, guess Naruto's species. Naruto leapt from rooftop to the tree line that surrounded the school. He rushed to the last position of one clone before it dispelled itself. What that clone had seen pissed the blonde off furiously. His clone asked a nearby student where he could find Sendo Yukari because he needed help with his homework and lied about having made a deal with the girl. The student chuckled and gestured to the tree line, where the clone saw a young brunette desperately trying to retrieve a stick of some sort from two kids about his age that taunted her and played a game of keep away, before saying, "They're teaching her a lesson or two, so you might want to go look for some other tutor." Naturally, the clone would have leapt into action, but it was aware of its fragility and the fact it could dispel after one blow. Instead of risking enraging the three, dispelling, and risking his charge's safety even more than it already was, the clone thanked the boy before walking away. Once far enough away, the clone dispelled and Naruto received everything from it, including its anger. Naruto paused as he crouched on a branch above the three teens. The one his clone spoke to had joined the game, and narrowed his eyes. Yukari kept barely missing the stick they tossed about. Her eyes close to tears but not daring to spill, the Tomoed-eyed blonde narrowed his eyes, recalling a similar occurrence when several freshly made genin that passed during his first last year at the Konohagakure Academy tossed the goggles his Gigi had given him around, teasing him profoundly. Fighting the memory down, Naruto dropped from his branch, snatching the stick as it was thrown and landed between the three that had been torturing the small brunette. "Hey, what do you think you're doing, punk?" the boy he had spoken to asked. Yukari blinked when the blonde boy before her looked down at her with Tomoed cerulean blue eyes and smiled. He offered the stick to her and flashed a very thankful which his signature foxy grin, making the young girl blush profoundly. "I dunno what's so special about a stick," he said with genuine kindness, "but I do know what it's like to be pushed around. I've gotta have a few words with these guys, so why don't you go practice spells or something, kid? Come find me afterwards." Yukari blinked again before nodding in confusion and started to run away, quickly ducking behind a tree to watch the ensuing fight. Naruto knew she was there, but he didn't mind. She was out of the bully's way, and that's all that mattered to him. The boy who had spoken to his clone shouted at the blonde savior, "What the fuck is your problem? She's a damn witch, you dolt. I am the class president and I say she's the outlet of our frustrations." "Whoop-de-fucking-do for you," Naruto calmly said, his eyes narrowing on the apparent class president. "I don't give a damn if you're the fucking headmaster. You're nothing more than a group of posers talking a big talk." "Talking a big talk, eh?" the class president said with a smirk before nodding to the two with him. "Well, see who's talking a big talk when we kick your ass." The three simultaneously rushed him and he sighed, utilizing Kawamari to dodge their charge. Naruto watched from a safe distance as the three buffoons comically collided with each other headfirst. The blonde laughed as they all groaned and held their heads, each one cursing profoundly before glaring in his direction. "What's wrong, boys?" Naruto taunted. "I thought you were going to kick my ass." "Nice trick," a voice said from behind him. Naruto was none too surprised to see a fourth man behind him, said teen suddenly changing into a lizard man and his clothes being shed like a second skin. Inwardly, he fought back the urge to scream in terror as the memory of Orochimaru shedding his disguise, while outwardly he smirked. "Nice breath," He joked before lifting his left leg up at the knee, earning a yell of pain and his freedom. The lizard man fell to his knees and held his crotch as tears fell from his eyes. Naruto smirked evilly and looked back at the three shocked boys before cracking his neck and rolling his shoulders. "Who else wants some?" he asked with his savage grin. The two lackeys looked at the stunned class president before he started backing away. The bloodlust radiating off the blonde was scary, and he wanted none of it. The two lackeys also began to retreat, only to turn to face three of the most beautiful girls they had ever seen. "Holy shit!" they chorused as drool started to appear from her hiding spot. Yukari also drooled upon seeing the pink-haired goddess of the school. Akashi Moka. The young witch had seen her from time to time, and faintly remembered seeing a blonde boy with her. Yukari's eyes widened in realization that the blonde was the boy she had seen often with the beautiful Moka. "Ohio, Moka-chan, Tamao-chan, Kuru-chan," Naruto said with a grin, making the three boys gape upon realizing exactly who the boy was if he was associated with the three freshman girls many lusted for. Horror crossed their faces and they spun around, facing the boy and resisting the urge to stare at the beauties behind them. Naruto's position as guardian to Akashi Moka had spread rather quickly when he threatened that one boy near the beginning of the year. "Yu Uzumaki, NN Naruto," the class president shakily said before swallowing in fear when the blonde appeared right in front of him, his Mangekyo Sharingan glaring at him threateningly despite the smile on his face. "You might want to leave my sight now," he whispered to the teen, "before I tell the three behind you how not only you were bullying a little girl, but also tried to tackle me, their friend. This eye isn't over," the class president shakily threatened. Naruto snorted and jerked his head, making the three boys rush back to the school. The blonde smirked and looked at the three girls watching with confusion as the three teens ran away. The fourth, lizard man, slinked back into the forest, still cradling himself and limping as he did so unnoticed. "What was that about, Naruto-kun?" Moka asked in concern, afraid her troublemaking crush had caused more trouble for himself. Tamao and Kurumu nodded in agreement, also wishing to know what the confrontation they interrupted was all about. "Nothing to concern your pretty little head about, Moka-chan," Naruto assured her with a pat on her head as he walked past her to a tree where a small girl kept poking her head out to see him. As she poked her head back out from behind the tree, Yukari found herself face to face with her whiskered savior. The young witch yelped and fell back on her behind from shock while Naruto laughed slightly in amusement. The girl blushed and suddenly waved her wand. Naruto jerked his head back in time to avoid being struck by a falling pot. "Now that wasn't very nice," Naruto said to the girl with a small smirk as he crossed his arms over his chest. Yukari's eyes narrowed and she went to wave her wand again when she realized it wasn't in her hands anymore. "Hey," she shouted, "give that back. This is your wand, isn't it?" he asked while examining the small stick in his hands. Humph, would have figured it to look more like a star-tipped stick of something. "Give it back now," Yukari shouted, hopping to her feet and reaching for it. Naruto lazily glanced at her before holding the stick between two fingers at either end and bent it experimentally, making her eyes widen before she fearfully explained, "No." "What?" he asked, releasing the strained type of hold on the stick and held it in one hand. "Would it break if I did that? Couldn't you just find another stick?" "Give it back, idiot," Yukari shouted, reaching for the wand again. "I need it." "Naruto-kun, give it back," Moka shouted, "you're being a bully." Naruto rolled his eyes. "I am not, I am just looking at it, relax Moka-chan." A slap to the back of the head courtesy of Moka made the blonde yelp and gave the young witch her wand back. As soon as it was in her hands, she waved it again and a heavy pot fell on the already pained blonde's head, making him yowl in pain and clutch his head. "Goddamned brat," he shouted. "Fuck, that hurt." "Serves you right," Yukari shouted, "you meanie. I help you escape the troublesome trio and I am the meanie?" Naruto shot back, small tears of pain welling in the corners of his eyes. "Get your priorities straight." "I didn't need your help, and I didn't ask for it," the witch shouted. "I've always been able to handle myself without anyone's help for most of my life. I would have been able to handle them." The three girls standing behind Naruto gasped at the brunette's proclamation. To be alone at that age, they couldn't begin to consider how the girl felt. Naruto kept his angered facade up while inwardly, he sympathized with the young witch. He knew all too well what it was like to be alone for so long. Naruto kept an even gaze on the girl standing before him before rolling his neck and rubbing the back of his head, giving the young girl a grin. He patted her head through her witch-like hat and smiled, thoroughly confusing all the girls present. "You've got guts, kid," he said with a grin, a brotherly smile he gave to a small boy in a fishing village long ago reappearing on his face. "I respect that. Watch your temper though, Yukari, it might wind you into a situation I won't be able to bail you out of." That said and done, the blonde vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving four very confused girls behind. Yukari, now nervous that the boy was gone, quickly ran back to her own dorm and away from the teenage girls with her. The next day, Naruto sighed as he avoided a paint can falling on his head for the third time that day as he left the school. Ever since his encounter with the witch Draco instructed him to watch over, he had been avoiding falling objects like it was raining them, only instead they would be posted over doorways. Only one managed to hit him, and luckily for the blonde, it was an eraser jammed in the doorway of his homeroom when he entered, just a few moments before the bell rang. He recalled a similar prank to his sensei and knew immediately that war had been declared against him. He had a faint idea as to who it was that declared it, too. As he walked towards the forest to the back entrance of the Monstars clubhouse, he felt a small barely readable chakra signature, aka, said which he had to defend. The familiar bamf sound of a pot appearing above his head confirmed his suspicions, and with a sigh, the blonde stepped back and turned around to see a shocked witch with her wand pointing at him standing a few feet from him, running his hand through his golden locks. The blonde grumbled a question to the few deities that decided to listen to him at that moment. Was I anything like this back home? Shaking his head from the thought, Naruto looked at the girl and crossed his arms. So, 10 feet was as close as you could get? Shut up. Yukari shouted, still pointing her wand at him. I read up on you, Uzumaki Baka. You're nothing but a brainless thug. True, but I am not a pipsqueak anymore, he shot back with a grin. Yukari turned red in the face and growled threateningly at him, but he considered it to be more along the lines of what an angry little sibling would be like. Cute. I am the perfect height for someone my age. Yukari defended herself before her eyes narrowed, and I demand you stay away from Moka. Naruto blinked before shrugging. Sorry, not my choice in the matter. You want me away from Moka? Talk to her, which you can do in about 3, 2. Naruto-kun. Moka called, rushing to his side and passing the shocked witch she paid no heed to before hugging the blonde. Her cheeks reddened when she realized what she was doing and she stepped back, putting her hands behind her sheepishly. Gomen, Naruto-kun, can I? Yeah. Naruto waved her off, rolling his eyes and tilting his head to the left. Moka released a cry of joy before wrapping her arms around him again and biting down, giving a small moan of content when she began to drink his blood. Naruto put his arms around her before he began lightly swaying, just to tease the shocked witch in front of him. Yukari watched with wide eyes as the pinkhead she adored gave the school idiot a hickey to rival all hickeys. Why, you, get away from Moka-chan. Yukari shouted before waving her wand. Several pots appeared above Naruto's head and they fell hard. The blonde took each hit with a grunt, eventually disrupting Moka's meal and making her back off from him. When she released him, a little disgruntled and flushed that her feeding was interrupted by his seemingly naughty grunts, the blonde began swaying again. Pass the salt to Yame Nichan. Dis miso ramen is too bland, the tomoed-eyed boy muttered before his eyes rolled into the back of his head and he fell backwards, out like a light, some would say. Naruto-kun. Moka exclaimed in shock before turning to see a very smug-looking Yukari. Why did you do that? He doesn't deserve your affection. He won't appreciate you like I do. Moka-chan. Yukari cried, suddenly appearing before the pink-haired vampire and beaming up at her. Come on, Moka-chan. Let's get away from this doby and be together forever. What? No. Why would I go with someone that hurt my friend? Moka asked, making Yukari's beaming look drop into a frown. Why, you don't like me either, do you? She asked quietly. Moka blinked in confusion before Yukari's lips started to tremble. Before she could attempt to console the girl, Naruto released a groan of pained awakening and her attention went to him. The sudden change in attention caused the young witch to become angry at the pinkette. I thought you were different, she cried before waving her wand and willing a pot to appear over Moka's head. It fell and connected with the pinkette, making her cry out in pain as Yukari ran away, hiding her tears from the very confused vampire. Well, Naruto grunted as he sat up, that could have gone better. You okay, Moka-chan? Hi. Thank you, Naruto-kun, Moka said as she rubbed her head. What was that all about? Naruto remained quiet as he saw a bird suddenly fly off after the fleeing witch. He kept a calm face as he stood and then assisted Moka to her own feet. After waving off the gratitude for the assistance to standing, he said, come on, let's go get Kurumu and Tamao. I have a feeling we're gonna need their help. For what? Moka asked. Naruto didn't respond as they walked back into the school to the newspaper club's room. When they arrived, he was greeted by the same greetings he received from Kurumu and Tamao. Kurumu would glomp him, attempting to kill him by pushing his face into her voluptuous pillows, and Tamao would saunter over to him while Moka would reprimand Kurumu, asking if he wanted to go to the jacuzzi or to a lake she knew of. He didn't even bother to answer her, instead he suddenly summoned a toad. Gamatotsu, He greeted with a nod while the three girls gaped at the large dog-sized toad that was yellow and had orange markings on it as well as a blue vest. "How's it going?" "Nay, I am hungry, Nissan." Gamatotsu whined. Naruto rolled his eyes and reached into his vest, which he had several seals drawn over the night after he got it, before somehow pulling out 4 bags of barbecue chips. The yellow-skinned toad's eyes widened upon seeing them. Before he could grab them though, Naruto pulled them back. Now, Tatsu-kun," he teased with a smile, "what's Naruto's rule?" Gamatotsu sighed longingly before looking at the blonde. "Always assist Nissan before getting a snack. What can I do, Nissan?" "I want you to give Fukasaku-sama a simple message. The reply to the question he asked me yesterday," he said. Gamatotsu nodded, taking the information in, and Naruto continued, "In 3 months, it'll be ready." "Okie dokie, Nissan. I'll tell Fukajiji right away," Gamatotsu said with a smile before looking at the chips. With a grin, Naruto gave the large toad the 4 bags, which he quickly shoved into his mouth, plastic wrappings and all, before swallowing. After satisfyingly smacking his lips, Gamatotsu smiled at the blonde and vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto, satisfied he had accomplished something he had been thinking about while dodging the many items Yukari attacked him with. "Was that a toad?" Tamao asked with wide eyes. A toad from Mount Mayuboku? You know about the Gama clan?" Naruto asked with equally wide eyes as he looked at the mermaid. Said girl slowly nodded her head. "I thought, but," Kasen said, "legend," before she could be asked to repeat her disbelieving mumbles. Tamao squealed loudly and glomped onto Naruto. I figured it out, she cried as she squeezed Naruto in a hug, the blonde suddenly finding himself wondering where she had gotten the surge in strength. A certain young witch sniffled as she sat against a tree. "What was I thinking? Moka-chan, loving me when she can have a bad boy like Uzumaki Naruto? Not to mention he's apparently the strongest monster here. Why would anyone want to be with me when they could have someone like him?" Well, a certain voice hissed in displeasure, making Yukari's eyes widen in fear. "Look who we have here." Yukari looked up to see the class president smirking down at her with his 2 thugs standing on either side of him, one cracking his knuckles and the other eyeing her hungrily. Yukari reached for her wand only for it to be snatched out of her hand once again. "I don't think so," the class president growled before holding the wand in 2 hands. "Last time I didn't know this stick of yours was dangerous, but now I know better." "Give it back," Yukari shouted, hopping to her feet and reaching for her wand. She was really regretting not putting a retrieval charm on her wand when her mother offered to. The class president laughed as he continued to pull it out of her reach, his 2 lackeys also finding humor in her torture. "Ah, come on CP, one said, this is getting real old, real fast, let's just eat her and call it a day. Sides, we still gotta deal with that Uzumaki kid." "You're right Gerald," CP said with a grin before looking down at the horrified Yukari, but first. To the young witch's horror, the class president snapped her wand in half. The tears that were falling before rushed back to her face and she looked down at the broken stick he threw at her feet. The 3 laughed at her sadness, finding amusement in toying with their prey. The class president sighed before grinning predatorily. "This has been fun and all, Sendo," he said sarcastically and earning the young witch's attention, "but enough is enough." The boy looked at his 2 lackeys and nodded, making them grin. To Yukari's horror, the human skin of each boy tore as their muscles, bones, and scales beneath their disguises ripped out. Claws and fangs grew in place of fingers and teeth, and a horrible odor filled the young witch's nose. Their scales were a hideous brown and their yellow eyes narrowed at her. Heh, the leader of lizard men chuckled darkly as he glared down at her. "I'd like to say it's been nice knowing you, but I'd be lying. Goodbye, Borderblood, and good riddance." Yukari's eyes squeezed shut as the lizard man reached for her. A single thought ran through her mind, one she would have never expected to think at that moment. "Naruto, Moka-chan, I am sorry," the young brunette thought as tears spilled down her cheeks. A pained grunt filled her ears, but when no acknowledgement of pain came to her senses, Yukari opened her eyes in confusion. Doing so, her eyes widened and she felt her jaw drop. Standing with his hand clenched tightly around the class president's scaly wrist, Naruto had his back to her. The blonde teen with tomoed eyes glanced over his shoulder at the scared girl and he gave her a foxy grin. "Didn't I tell you to watch your temper?" he jokingly asked. "You're lucky I was in the area." "Him again. Let go of CP." The 2 other lizard men growled as they crouched into defensive stances. One made to pounce at the blonde, when a flying kick from a winged blue-haired beauty sent him rolling onto his back. "Stay away from my destined one, you ugly son of a bitch," Kurumu snarled, landing and baring fangs and claws at the downed lizard man. Yukari blinked in confusion and her attention went to the 3rd lizard man, who turned to run only to be hit by two simultaneous fists to the jaw. Falling to his back revealed a pissed-off mermaid and an odd pinkette that was staring at her fist. Wow, Moka mumbled, I didn't know I could hit that hard. See? And you said I'd have to remove your Rosario. I knew you were strong without her, Moka-chan. Naruto said with a smile to the pinkette, earning a blush from her and two envious glares from the two blue-haired girls. He smiled before his eyes hardened and his glare turned intense on the class president, still transformed and struggling to free himself from Naruto's grip. The toad-eyed blonde twisted his hand, forcing the lizard man to flip onto his back and release a cry of pain. I believe I told you not to pick on others, the blonde snarled to the whimpering teen. You think you're the shit around here, but here's a wake-up call for you. You're not. Be bastard, the lizard hissed out, only to roar in agony when Naruto twisted himself and dropped his leg onto the lizard man's shoulder. Naruto yanked on the arm in his grip and a sickening pop filled the area. The girls all winced as the class president released a shrill yowl of pain and tears rushed to his eyes. Gah! I'll kill you, he roared as he began thrashing for freedom. Naruto narrowed his eyes and got to his feet, the class president's wrist still in his grip. With a slight yank, the reptilian teen was pulled to his feet, hissing in pain from the movement. The blonde pushed the CP back with his free hand, extending him to their arm's length distance, before releasing his wrist. Immediately afterwards, a bicycle kick to the jaw courtesy of the annoyed blonde sent the monster flying back about 10 feet, landing with a skid of an extra 2 feet or so. Dumbass, Naruto scoffed as the three reptiles began to slowly get to their feet. He sighed and looked at the approaching Moka, their eyes meeting, before he glanced at her Rosario. With a curt nod from the pinkette, Naruto smiled and grabbed the Rosario, yanking it from the chain. Kurumu, Yukari and Tamao used their arms to shield themselves from the sudden burst of yokai that signified the arrival of inner Moka. The silver-haired vampire glanced around the area before looking at the blonde suspiciously. It seems you've managed to call me out for another pointless fight. Naruto shrugged, sticking his hands in his pockets before giving the vampire a foxy grin. Thought you'd enjoy the exercise, Moka-san. Don't get smart with me, Uzumaki. Moka snapped with narrowed eyes when she recognized the presence of another. And why is that fishwoman here? I thought you ended her. Naruto's tomos spun angrily at the suggestion and he spoke through gritted teeth. Do not make me regret this decision, Moka-san. I could easily teach Moka-chan how to call upon your strength without removing the Rosario. Is that a threat, Uzumaki? Moka asked, turning to face the blonde with her hands on her hips and her red eyes narrowed at him. It's a promise, Naruto growled out. To his surprise, Moka merely smirked and looked away, her attention going to the slack-jawed lizard men staring at her while simultaneously wetting themselves. Moka sneered at them, finding no interest in their forms. Humph, she scoffed, I refuse to resort to fighting them. The three girls standing nearby released a simultaneous what? While the lizard men thanked whatever gods were watching over them, Naruto narrowed his eyes as they flashed black and blue, the atom shape revealing itself and making the vampire shiver in either fear or excitement. Too good to fight these guys, huh? He asked with a small sneer, earning a glare from the red-eyed vampire, before smirking. Works for me. I want to introduce them to a hell I knew long, long ago. Intrigued by Naruto's words, everyone turned to him. Their eyes were either narrowed or wide with confusion dancing across them. The blonde smirked and snapped his attention back to the lizard men with his semi-eternal Mangekyo, a word dreaded by the succubus and vampire. Albeit reluctantly for the latter's present state of mind, escaped smiling face, not one of generosity, but one promising pain. Tsukuyomi. The three lizard men's eyes glossed over and the girls watched as nothing happened for a moment, before they screamed suddenly and clutched their heads. Naruto's back was to them, but Moka's enhanced senses could smell the blood pouring from his eyes as a result of the technique. The blonde explained the reasoning behind abnormal effects once to outer Moka, but inner wasn't exactly paying attention at the time. Yukari watched with awe as the class president screamed in agony before falling forward. Essentially brain dead as his mouth foamed over, the other two monsters were in no better positions. Both falling to the ground as foam began to form on their maws. The Sharingan-blessed blonde sighed before dropping to a knee and pinching the bridge of his nose, groaning in pain. Tamao and Kurumu were the first two at his side, both grabbing an arm and pulling it over their shoulders. Kurumu reverted back to her regular state as she helped the mermaid carry her destined one, and an odd witch stayed behind with an intrigued vampire. Interesting, Moka hummed out, earning Yukari's attention. The vampire looked at the witch and gave her a smirk. The other Moka was kind, but I will warn you now, hurt either her or Uzumaki again, and I will make your next medium vanish, painfully. Know your place, Sendo-san. Yukari could only watch with wide eyes as the silver-haired bombshell picked her Rosario up and followed the two blue-haired beauties. not replacing the Rosario to its rightful place lest she risks a collapsing situation. Plus, Moka wanted answers from the tomoed-eyed blonde, mainly about the eyes he contained. Sadly, she would not get her answers that night, as the blonde would evade her questioning gaze by simply placing her Rosario back. Moka-chan and Naruto-kun, save me. A certain brunette witch thought with a giggle before her face flushed and her eyes glistened. She picked the pieces of her wand up and carried it away to her dorm room while her saviors recovered from the interaction. The class president and his 2 lackeys wouldn't be discovered for another 3 hours, and when one of the lackeys would recover, he would repetitively scream no more, Gai-sensei. Death to Lee. No more youth. Which confused the doctors doting on the traumatized teen. Only one would know the meaning behind his words, and that night, Naruto had a smirk planted on his face as he slept. He would wake up, in his own room of course, and send a silent thanks to his bushy-browed friends back home. A week later, Naruto yawned as he walked into the lunchroom for breakfast. Not that he'd eat the Academy's breakfast buffet, which consisted of various foods not known to average humans, or shinobi, or dare look in its direction for that matter. Seconds later, he was joined by a blue-haired woman many freshman boys lusted for. Naru-kun. Tamao cried in joy, causing many of the boys to snarl at the blonde as the beautiful mermaid straddled him and tucked her head into the crook of his neck. Naruto gasped for air, not ready for the glomp the mermaid had provided at the ungodly hour of 6:45 in the morning the breakfast buffet opened. The blonde had awoken about 45 minutes before, completing a 10-mile jog as soon as he woke and headed to his secluded training area afterwards, as per routine, before arriving at the lunchroom. Tamao-chan. Naruto grunted out while the mermaid enjoyed her private time with her maid-to-be. I am not a pillow, Tamao-chan. The mermaid merely smiled, not moving from her spot as she sighed contently and inhaled his scent. The musky smell of the tomoed blonde filled her nostrils and the maiden of the water allowed a pleasuring shudder overcome her body. Neither Moka nor Kurumu woke at 6, preferring to eat at the dorm's kitchen with their mother hen the gargoyle Demona, allowing her to discover Naruto's routine and adjust her own to match his. Over the past few days, Tamao had incited more makeout sessions than either of her 2 adversaries, to her knowledge, and not once had her chosen maid objected. Then again, it wasn't as though he had the energy to, despite being a stamina freak as many had called him. Naruto was still only human. Naru-kun. Tamao sighed out quietly as she nuzzled her face into his chest. I love you. Naruto sighed. I know you do, Tamao-chan. He had been hearing that a lot lately, especially from the mermaid for some reason. Kurumu had been telling him the same 3 words every time she managed to greet him her own special way, and Naruto swore he had heard Moka mutter the words out after each of her feedings. He couldn't find it in himself to give them a respectable reply, because it wouldn't be fair to the other 2 girls going for his heart. Don't you love me, Naru-kun? Tamao asked, looking up at him expectantly. To her dismay, though, she came face to face with a scarecrow replica of her beloved. With a frown, Tamao looked to see the blonde walking out the 2 doors backwards with an apologetic grin on his face. I just remembered I have a paper due this Friday. See ya later, Tamao-chan. The tomoed-eyed boy said before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. The mermaid pouted before smiling and standing from her spot straddling the straw yudo and returning to her dorm. She was sure she was the closest out of the 3 after the blonde, so she wasn't worried, unless some other girl was thrown into the mix. Tamao was sure she had Naruto's heart just about in her grasp. Elsewhere, a purple-haired girl with a sucker in her mouth sneezed before she returned to staring longingly at her gym teacher as he ate a donut, and in a palace, a platinum blonde girl in royal robes sneezed before attempting to soothe the cries of a young infant with cerulean blue eyes and platinum blonde hair, not to mention the faint 3 whiskers on either cheek. Naruto-kun. Moka cried later that day as she jumped onto his back playfully upon entering the newspaper club's room. Naruto grinned. Out of the 3 at the school, Moka was the only girl he could really tolerate. The only thing that really annoyed him would be Yada. She cried in joy, similar to his own excited cry, before sinking her fangs into his neck. Ga. Moka-chan. Naruto protested. Not cool, Moka-san. Akashiya. What are you doing to Naru-kun? Koi. 2 very upset blue-haired beauties shrieked as they came across the feeding girl. Naruto sighed again, his tomoed eyes spinning slowly as he sensed an approaching presence, turning and interrupting the pink-haired Moka from her free period feeding, making the young gorgeous vampire pout profoundly. The spiky-haired blonde looked down to see the witch hat-wearing brunette he was supposed to be protecting beaming up at him. With a friendly smile, Naruto said, Ohio, Yukari-chan, fancy meeting you here. The young witch giggled and her cheeks turned a slight shade of pink. Hi Naruto-kun, Moka-chan. And what do you want, you brat? Kurumu asked, still irked the girl had attacked her love for no reason time and time again over the past week. The only positive was the comforting hugs Kurumu would often pull the blonde into afterwards. A pot suddenly appeared above her and fell at an alarming rate, only to be swapped out with a pencil that bounced off her head and landed on the ground. The busty succubus blinked in confusion, looking at her destined one as he spun the pot on his finger, looking down disapprovingly at the pouting witch. That wasn't very nice, Yukari, Naruto scolded, and your timing was way too obvious. How many times do I have to say it? Take the names in stride, and get back at them when you least expect it. Hi Naruto-sensei, Yukari said as she wrote the reminder down on a notepad that appeared from nowhere. The three girls' jaws popped open upon hearing this. Their made-to-be, destined one, friend was giving advice to the girl on when to prank someone? Naruto-sensei, Kurumu chorused, looking at the blonde with confusion on her features. Long story, Naruto waved off. I'll tell y'all later. What can we do for you, Yukari-chan? I want to join the newspaper club, the brunette cried before leaping at Naruto, who swapped himself out with Moka, only for the witch to cry out in joy as she nuzzled himself into her bosom. Moka-chan's breasts are so soft. The young girl cried out in joy, while Kurumu and Tamao stared with disbelieving eyes. Naruto fell over the desk he was leaning on, laughing his heart out. He discovered Yukari's little crush on the vampire a few days ago, and while slightly disturbed by it, he could only laugh when she proclaimed her desire to be in a three-way with Moka and Naruto. Moka exclaimed with wide eyes. Why Yukari-san? I love you Moka-chan, Yukari cried, and I'll stop anyone who keeps us apart from each other and our Naruto-kun. We shall bed each other every night, threesome, FTW. The blonde teen in question laughed even harder and held his gut. Kurumu's and Tamao's eyes widened at the proclamation and they shouted, hell no. Stupid cows. Yukari cried, pointing her somehow fixed wand at the two, stay away from my lovers. My lovers. Naruto repeated between his laughs as he rolled onto his stomach and pounded his fist on the ground. Little brat. Kurumu growled, grabbing the witch by her shoulder and pulling her off the thankful and shocked vampire. Moka's face heated up when she realized exactly what Yukari had said. She snuck a glance at the Tomoed blonde as he howled with laughter on the ground and her blush darkened, her face turning a dark shade of red. Fat cow. Kurumu looked livid at that name and her eyes glared back at the defiant chocolate orbs glaring at her. Flat chest. Kurumu snapped back as she dropped the small girl and hugged her immense breasts. No real man would enjoy a flat chest pipsqueak such as yourself unless they were a lolicon. Then I guess Naruto-kun is a lolicon, Yukari shouted. The declaration made the blonde snap from his laughing state and wiped the tears from his eyes. Yukari-chan, Naruto said, getting everyone's attention, don't assume things, okay? Now, come on, I have something I want to show you. Your penis? She asked almost too eagerly. The blonde rolled his head back and barked a laugh out while the two blue-haired beauties glared heatedly at the disappointed brunette. Naruto grabbed Yukari's shoulder and looked back at the three girls now throwing pouts his way. Now don't be like that, we'll be back, Yane. Ah, look who it be. Mac greeted the blonde as he released Yukari's shoulder. The young witch stumbled and grabbed a chair in an effort to recover from Naruto's shunshin. The red-headed leprechaun laughed at her unease and looked at the rest of the group. Now we need only to wait for Blitz, Draco said as he took a puff of his cigarette. Mac gave a friendly nod to the odd witch as she looked around at the other members of the Monstars. Naruto walked past her and sat in his chair, yawning and cracking his neck. Ra had noticed this and grinned before speaking. Someone been getting it on with his vampy girl. Is she a yowler? Naruto sent a bored glare Rawhead's way. Ha ha ha, you're a fucking riot, Rawhide. The boogeyman said with a grin, that I am. But ye dinna answer me, Blondie. The other members, even the smoking leader, looked expectantly at the Tomoed-eyed blonde. Naruto groaned as Yukari squealed. Yay. Threesome, here I come. As expected, Mac and Rawhead burst out laughing while Draco choked on his cigarette and Vern stared with wide eyes at the blonde. I didn't know you were a lolicon, Ruto, Vern muttered before clapping a hand to his head. Now I understand why you are not screwing Akashiya, Huron, or Ichinos. You dig the flatties. Mac fell backwards out of his chair while Rawhead snapped his attention at the now grumbling blonde. Hey, if you are not porking them Uzumaki, can I avenue one? A kunai manifested from an unknown location on the blonde embedded itself 3 inches deep into his shoulder. The boogeyman grunted as he pulled it out and Mock glared at the infuriated Hanyu. Could have just said no, Rawhead, you may not but no, gotta go and throw another knife at me. Not my fault you're a goddamn spirit, Raw, Naruto snarled. Yukari blinked in confusion before finally voicing the question she's been waiting to ask. Naruto-kun. Where are we? Who are these guys? She asked him, Naruto looked at Draco and the dragon shook his head. Naruto looked at the witch apologetically. Sorry, Yukari-chan, he said, I can't answer those questions, yet. Yukari frowned before smiling. Okay. Why am I here then? I can answer that, Imouto, a chilled voice said as he walked into the room. Yukari looked over to see a teenage boy nearly 3 times her size and her eyes widened. Around his left leg from the mid-thigh down was a cast with several symbols engraved on it and names signed in many different names. I need your help, Blitz said quietly as Vern and Draco assisted him in sitting down. Naruto frowned. He was unaware the Yeti had been injured, but then again, Draco did say this would be a good test to see if the witch could help the Monstars later on. Blitz looked at the shocked witch, recalling a time when they first met. Be Blitz ni? The young brunette whimpered out, her eyes tearing up before she shot over the large oak table with the Monstars insignia carved into the top and hugged the Yeti tightly. I missed you. Blitz chuckled before hugging her tightly, the 2 rookies of the club watching with confusion on their faces, and the 3 veterans smiling. Knowing of the witch from stories the Yeti told them, Draco and Vern silently sent the others looks telling them to keep quiet as the reunited siblings to reconnect. I missed you too, Imouto, Blitz said quietly, lifting the witch hat from her head and ruffling her hair. Had I known you were attending yokai, I would have helped a lot sooner. What happened to your leg, Nissan? Yukari asked with a glower. I'll get whoever did it, hit M with a trusty sink. Naruto, Mac, and Rawhead all shared a collective laugh at that, while the 2 reptilian members of the group smiled along with the chuckling Blitz. The white-haired teen smiled at the brunette, ruffling her hair again and making her pout in annoyance. It's my own fault, Carrie, he said with a grin, got a little too enthusiastic during a spar and it bit me in the ass. Tsunade-san. Naruto snorted in amusement. Made this cast especially for me, telling me I can only heal the femur bone naturally, but luckily for me, I happen to know a young witch in training that knows an actual healing witch whom happens to be her mother. How do ye know, Yukari, was it? Rawhead asked the brunette, earning a nod from her as she climbed up to sit atop the Yeti's shoulder, as though she fit perfectly, which she did, before he continued, how do ye know her anyway, Blitz? There's a story I haven't thought about in a while, Blitz said with a chuckle before beginning to tell them how he had met the young witch's family a good 7 years ago. It was during his time in New York that Blitz had first met Yukari. Having gotten separated from his mother as a 12-year-old and meeting a friendly family of witches that assisted him in finding his mom. The families stayed in touch, celebrating New Year parties and birthdays together thanks to magic and the powerful puppy dog look often given by the brunette witch. Yukari threw in her own stories, which made the white-haired Yeti feel embarrassed, knowing his friends would rib him for them later, especially a story concerning a rubber duck, a firework, and a very, very unlucky family black cat. He blew it up. Rawhead laughed out, my good God, lassie, say it nay be true. Our kind cuddly Yeti made her cat explode? Hi. Yukari giggled out before looking at the embarrassed Yeti. Nissan did it on purpose no matter what he says, he doesn't like cats. There hell spawn, Blitz countered, trying to defend his now peaceful ways and keep the ribbing down, and who names their cat boom, anyway? I was 5. Yukari whined as the Monstars laughed at the squabbling siblings, be nice, Nissan or I won't call my cousin. You will so, Carrie, the Yeti countered with a smug grin, you love me too much. The group laughed again as Yukari crossed her arms over her chest and puffed her cheeks out in a pout. It was the beginning of the young witch's next chapter in her high school life, one she was excited to begin, especially with her beloved Naruto-kun and her favorite Nissan. The weeks had passed and the group was entering his 3rd month at the school, coming up on the quarterly tests. Kurumu and Yukari had continued to argue, with the latter becoming more and more of a perverted younger sister to a certain Uzumaki. Yukari had often voiced her dreams during Monstars meetings of a 4-way between herself, Akashi and Moka, Naruto and Blitz. The club's UK members wouldn't let the Tibetan and Hanyu live it down. Mac and Rawhead laugh about it to this moment. A blue-haired mermaid and a pink-haired vampire had gotten into a large fight caused by the former being found by the latter pressing said Uzumaki Naruto against a wall and making out with him just after he finished his morning exercises. The exhausted blonde being unable to fight her advances. Moka grew red with jealous rage before shrieking and attacking the mermaid with righteous feminine fury. During Tamao's recovery from her onslaught, the pink-haired vampire spun around and captured a dazed blonde's neck in her mouth while slightly grinding against him. Perhaps Yukari is more of an influence on Moka than we think. Tamao shook herself from her daze and growled before attacking the pinkette, causing Moka to harshly remove her fangs from Naruto's neck, which made the blonde yelp in pain. Naruto clutched his throat before flaring his chakra, which he had done to signal his other club. This alerted Vern and Rawhead to his predicament. The two Monstars members couldn't help but laugh at their friend when they arrived. God man. Rawhead managed to gasp out, the hottest girl in school is necking ye and ye can't even live through it. What's wrong with that picture? Shut up. Naruto gasped out. The two girls that were starting to rip each other's clothes off stopped, much to the dismay of many male witnesses, and turned towards their injured crush. Naruto-kun, Naru-kun. Tamao and Moka simultaneously cried before they both rushed to his aid. Moka put her hand on Naruto's neck over his own, applying inhuman strength and pressure to his neck, increasing the clotting of his blood. Tamao, seeing the pinkette was doing something productive for her maid-to-be, and apologizing for causing his injury, turned on the two Monstars members. Now who are you two? Stop laughing at Naru-kun. You could have made an effort to help him, the mermaid shouted, causing the two boys to shrink down into themselves. Tamao-chan. Naruto started before breaking out into a fit of coughs and spitting up a disgusting combination of phlegm and blood. Naruto-kun. Moka cried in fear as she slid her shoulders under his left arm and snaked her right arm around his waist, steadying him as he held his throat. Don't try to talk, heal first. Forgetting the two that had been laughing at her crush, Tamao appeared in a mirrored position on Naruto's left. My poor mate, Tamao cooed, hugging the recovering blonde around his chest, over Moka's arm and under his arms. Did the bad vampire hurt you? Bad vampire? Moka growled, you're the one that pulled me off him? I was doing him a favor and keeping you from draining Naru-kun dry. The blue-haired girl hissed out before smiling up at the blonde. The pinkette glared at the maiden and Naruto groaned in discomfort and pain. The blonde's annoyance started rising when Rawhead and Vern spoke again. He's gotta be gay, Vern said as he watched the whole scenario with wide eyes. No straight guy would ignore such a thing. 'Tis a damn shame he gets those fine pieces of ass, grumbled Rawhead as he crossed his arms over his chest. This is just horrible to watch, such nice potential, all to waste. A kunai suddenly sent the boogeyman to the ground, stopped their whining, and all eyes watching went to that of the tomoed blonde. His left eye was twitching in annoyance and his left hand was drenched in blood, still in the post-throwing position. GZUSH Christ. Rawhead hollered in pain as he yanked the kunai from his left pectoral. That one was in my lung, ya daft idiot. Aw fuck off, Rawhead, Naruto grumbled, using the girl's stunned silence as a means to escape their glomp. He walked over to the boogeyman and held out a hand to the bald teen, offering to help him up. Rawhead accepted the hand and got back to his feet before driving his fist into the blonde's shoulder, earning a chuckle from the tomoed boy. Stop throwing things, Rawhead growled, making the wyvern laugh and Naruto roll his eyes. The girls watching both felt their jaws drop before they stormed over to Naruto and tapped his shoulders, turning to face them. Naruto was now face to face with two sweetly smiling beautiful women, their eyes gleaming with hurt and anger at discovering friends Naruto had kept from them. Naruto-kun, Naru-kun, they both said. How do you know them? Who are these guys? Oh, well ya see, Naruto fumbled for an explanation as only Monstars members are hopefuls, such as Yukari, can know of the existence of the club. He looked over his shoulders at the two boys, both of whom merely smirked and shook their heads. You sons of bitches, Naruto thought angrily before looking back at the curious, angry girls in front of him. Taking a quick glance of his surroundings, Naruto noticed a flyer for a talent show and a devious lie came to his mind. They are helping me prepare for the talent show? Naruto tried before the girls blinked in confusion. He glanced back at the two, who got the gist of his plan and begrudgingly nodded their agreement, and grinned before facing the girls again. Yeah. They're helping me with my talent at the talent show. You're entering the talent show? Tamao asked with wide eyes while Moka suddenly beamed. You have a talent? Can I see? Please, 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 please? He can't give a sneak preview to anyone, Vern said, grabbing Naruto's shoulder firmly and making the blonde grunt in discomfort. Can't risk someone taking his spot, sorry girls. That said, the blonde smiled apologetically at them and raised a hand seal they were all too familiar with. Before they could attempt to grab him, the bald teen behind Naruto grabbed his other shoulder and Naruto said, Yane. Before vanishing in a swirl of leaves, Tamao sighed in disappointment before glaring at Moka. This is all your fault, Akashi, the mermaid said, earning the pinkette's attention. My fault? Moka repeated before pointing accusingly at the blue-haired girl. You were practically shoving your tongue down Naruto-kun's throat, choking him with that filthy tongue of yours. He hasn't pushed me away once during our time together, Tamao countered. And what about you? What about me? Moka asked with narrowed eyes. You and Kurumu know that I've become addicted to his blood. Tomato juice doesn't cut it anymore. That's not our problem with your feeding, Tamao snarled. If you hadn't noticed, then there's got to be something wrong with you down there, After each feeding he walks with a slight limp. Moka's face turned a dark shade of pink and she turned away. I have no idea what you're talking about. You do so, Tamao hissed, making the girl's face turn a shade redder. I've felt it when and Kurumu's felt it when she jumps him during their cooking class. Remind me to have a talk with Kurumu, Moka grumbled, crossing her arms over her chest. Tamao continued despite her interruption, and you feel it whenever you feed off him from the front. What's your point? Moka asked, eyeing the blue-haired girl suspiciously. Tamao smirked and her eyes gleamed with lust. The only way one of us is going to win this little squabble, Tamao started before leaning in and whispering to the blushing vampire, is if one of us beds him first. From where Naruto was in the auditorium with Blitz and his girlfriend, the captain of the Yokai Glee Club and the Siren Mac mentioned during the first Monstars meeting, Sky. He glanced at the window and muttered, I feel as though I should start locking my door and window at night. Oh come off it, Naruto-san, Sky giggled out, her light voice sounding like the flutter of birds' wings. Blitz-kun wants me to help find your talent, seeing as Vern-san and Tommy-san, Rawhead, already signed you up for the competition. Now, tell me what you can do again? Naruto groaned and leaned against the front of the stage as he looked over the injured Yeti and his beautiful girlfriend. The Tomoed blonde wasn't that stupid, but Sky's personality reminded him of a cross between Shizune and the crazy snake lady from the exams. Her aura radiated nothing but sadistic malice with an underlining aura of kindness, and the siren looked just like Team 8's sensei Kurenai, only with sky-blue eyes, which are her namesake, and long sliver hair. I can make duplicates of myself, cast illusions, and create lightning. Fire stop. Sky interrupted him with a hand up. I didn't ask about your fighting skills, I asked you what you can do. Like what? Naruto asked with a furrowed brow. Sky sighed in exasperation before gesturing to the Tomoed boy while looking at her boyfriend. What can he do? She asked him. Blitz shrugged and the silver-haired girl slapped him over the back of the head. No help from you whatsoever. Rubbing her eyes, Sky said, okay, we have 10 hours until the show. What's something you do that no one knows about? I lose control of the demon inside me and steal my best friend's eyes before killing him brutally, Naruto thought with a dry chuckle before sheepishly saying, Blitz, seeing the hidden potential in one word, grinned and nudged Sky, I've got an idea. Pulling his girlfriend's ear to his lips, Blitz whispered a few things to her. Slowly, a smile came over the silver-haired girl's face and when he finished speaking, she looked at him and said, Babe, you're a genius. So I am told, the Tibetan native said with a grin before both looked at the confused Tomoed blonde and smiled. Naruto-san, Sky said with a smile that instantly put Naruto on the edge, have you ever heard of a boy band? A boy what now? The blonde asked before the siren grabbed his right arm and the Yeti grabbed his left arm, as soon as they explained the plan for his talent. Naruto cursed whatever deity was in control of his life. Naruto Koi is going to be in the talent show? Kurumu asked the pink-haired vampire with a beaming smile. Tamao and Moka arrived at the newspaper club with a plea to the club's teacher, Nekonom, to cover the talent show. When asked why, the two girls said Naruto would be among the performers. Of course, this earned the other two girls' attention and both bombarded the two girls with questions. Yeah, Tamao answered for the pinkette trying to pry the glomping witch off of her chest, but two guys helping him wouldn't let Naru-kun show us what he can do. Two boys are helping him. Yukari asked, dropping the pouch she was giving to Moka for prying her off. What do they look like? One's practically a skeleton, Moka said, and he had a scary voice, but he seemed unaffected when Naruto-kun threw a kunai at him. The other's a short blue-haired boy, more like your hair Curon, the mermaid threw in. He's about 5 inches shorter than Naru-kun. Rawhead and Vern. Yukari thought before beaming. Oh I know them, they're goofballs. Naruto-kun's perfectly safe with them. The other three, not so sure if Yukari was just trying to keep Moka in a chipper mood or off guard, didn't lighten up at all. They seemed to tense even more if anything. Do I have to wear this? Naruto asked with annoyance as he looked at himself in the mirror. He was dressed in black leather pants, making him feel incredibly stupid, a sleeveless navy shirt with an orange swirl on the front of it, which was much tighter than he was used to, and he was shoved into a pair of blue and black shoes that Blitz called Nikes, not to mention Sky made him pull the Showdown necklace over his shirt and had him tie his Hitai-ite, which she found after going through his duffel bag. He hadn't found the need to unpack, around his left bicep. Yes. Blitz and Sky simultaneously replied as they went through his things. Sky huffed in annoyance before looking at the blonde. Where's your iPod? She asked. Naruto looked dumbly at her and the siren tried again. Your Zune. The hell is a Zune? The Tomoed blonde asked her. Sky paled and looked at Blitz who sighed and dropped the blonde's duffel bag. Where you come from? Do you have MP3 players? Blitz asked. Naruto slowly shook his head. I've never heard of a more ridiculous name, the boy said, crossing his arms and leaning against the wall. What is it? Blitz reached into his back pocket and pulled a small rectangular device with a small screen on it and a circle just beneath it. The Yeti third year pressed a few buttons on the device and handed it to the blonde while explaining what it was. Obviously your village is out of tune with today's technological advancements. An MP3 player, like my iPod Nano that you're holding, is a type of device that allows humans to bring their music or videos with them on the go. What kind of fucked up enchantments? Naruto mumbled as he explored the small device in his hand. Not magic, Blitz corrected softly, but science, or rather, a human's explained version of magic. This small device can carry up to 2,000 songs. Bullshit. Naruto exclaimed with wide eyes. This little thing can hold 2,000 songs? How? That's the magical part. Sky interrupted her boyfriend before he could be lost to his technological fandom. We don't have to know. Here, use these headphones and choose a song that reflects your life. Sky. Blitz started to try and steer his girlfriend away from turning his club's newest probie into a mindless singing zombie, only to be silenced by the glare that threatened one of the few things keeping him happy, being as smart as he was. The Tibetan became very quiet as Naruto searched through the iPod for a song. As soon as the blonde started nodding his head to a beat only he could hear due to the headphones, Sky and Blitz looked at him with small smiles. He looked back at them and pulled the headphones out. This one, he said, a small gleam of excitement in his eyes. If I am doing this, I'll only do it with this song. Blitz took the iPod and looked at the song before grinning at Sky, told Ya this would be easy. Sky shook her head after seeing the song he had chosen before looking at him with a stern glare. Fine, this song. But then I choose the songs from now on. Now, you've got to do a few things at once. Can you do that? Before the word left her mouth, Naruto's hands went into a familiar cross shape and 5 duplicates of him appeared. He looked at the astounded Yeti and shocked Siren with a grin and asked, You were saying? How many can you make at once? Blitz asked with wide eyes. Naruto put a hand on his chin as he thought. Well, the blonde said after a moment of thinking, my maximum limit before my, clause for enrollment was perhaps 2,500. I could maybe pull off making 5,000, maybe more. Oh over FFFFF 5,000. Sky shrieked as Blitz's jaw visibly fell to the floor. How what where, just what type of monster are you, Naruto-san? The Narutos all grinned before replying simultaneously, one of a kind. Kurumu, Moka, Yukari and Tamao all waited with bubbling excitement as they sat in the audience for the talent show. So far, a boy with glasses had done the plate balancing trick many have done before. Shockingly, a plate fell and he was escorted off stage. A group of tap dancers were after that, doing fairly well before someone in the audience threw a banana peel on stage. The offender was removed from the audience by the 2 boys Moka and Tamao met earlier that day. Several other acts included an opera singer, a comedian that only succeeded in being cheered as he was dragged off stage, and other acts that had potential, once they practiced more. As the most recent act finished, an illusionist, a balding man wearing a turtleneck and scarf walked on stage. Thank you all for being a good audience. The drama teacher, Mr. Dao Inoue, said, and I'd like to thank my fellow judges for helping me with this year's talent show. Ms. Sky Day, our Glee Club's captain, Mr. Gaine Morioka, our photography club's vice president, and the headmaster himself. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, we have only one more performer, a last-minute addition to tonight's show. Mr. Naruto Uzumaki will be singing for us tonight. The newspaper club all had stars in their eyes as the blonde walked on stage with a microphone in hand. He was wearing an orange sleeveless hoodie over a blue t-shirt that fit close to his body and black baggy leather-ish pants over blue and black Nikes. He smiled at Mr. Inoue and the two shook hands before Inoue left the stage. Naruto looked out to the crowd before smiling sheepishly and scratching the back of his neck. I know that it's against the rules to use anything that would risk revealing what type of monster you are in the competition, he admitted, but I don't really want to win, so fuck the rules. The boys in the crowd clapped approvingly and the girls cheered as Naruto held his fingers in a familiar tiger seal and molded his chakra. 12 more toad-eyed blondes appeared and they all removed their hoodies to differentiate themselves from the original. 3 stepped back and began beatboxing into the mics. One clone chuckled and another stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, from Konoha of Hai no Kuni, we are one-man band. Yo, boss, you ready? Another asked as the 2 other clones joined the beatboxers. The original smiled and took a small breath before stepping forward. Here we go. Tell me what do y'all see, when y'all looking at me? He asked while pointing at himself. Oh. The chorus clones sang, on a mission to be, what I am destined to be. Naruto rapped, a clone hanging behind him into cage robes. The crowd cheered as Naruto continued. I've been through the pain and the sorrow. My struggle is nothing but love. Oh. I am a soldier, a fighter, a hardened survivor and all the above, yeah, the blonde said, pointing to the sky at the word above. All the above, oh, all the above, oh, all the above, all the above, oh, all the above, yeah. All the above, Naruto sang before returning to the slight beat dancing he had going on. The crowd was on its feet as he continued. Listen. Really, what do y'all see, when you're looking at me? Oh. See me come up from nothing, to me living my dreams? A clone hanged into a much younger Naruto, near age 5, wearing a white and orange shirt similar to what he's often seen in today, and green shorts. The original sighed slightly before gesturing to the clone that sat and burst into tears childishly, representing his lonely childhood. I done been to the bottom, I done suffered a lot. I deserve to be rich headin' straight for the top, Naruto said, pointing to the clone then himself as the song changed from speaking of his past to his present and future. Look how I ride to the block, look how I representative for my hood. I get nothing but love when I go to my hood, getting to fortune and fame. Money's goin' to shame. My new problem today is a guy named Pain. Oh, Naruto went to the other side of the stage, pointing to himself as he continued. How the hell could you stop me? Why in the world would ya try? I'd go on forever, that's just how I am designed. He pointed to his eyes, making several girls in the front row squeal. That's just how I was built, see the look in my eyes. He threw his arm out and said, you take all this from me, and I am still gonna survive. Moka, Tamao, Kurumu and Yukari all cheered as they watched their friend, made-to-be, Destined One entertain the many students attending the show. The girls each felt a pang in her heart when they saw the crying child on stage, not knowing much of their crush's past. You'll get the truth from me, but some people go and lie, Naruto sang, not be specific about what he meant. I am a part of these streets, till the day that I die. Say hi to my haters, they're mad I actually made it, take a look, you can tell I am destined for greatness. Tell me what do you see, when you're looking at me? Naruto and a clone said as the clone stepped forward. Oh, I am on a mission to be what I am destined to be. Oh, I done been through all the pain and the sorrow. My words are driven by love. I am a soldier, a fighter, a hardened survivor. Shit, I am all the above. All the above, oh, all the above, oh, all the above, all the above, oh, all the above, yeah. Naruto nodded as he walked to the other side of the stage, looking into the crowd and at a pretty senior before crouching down and continuing. It's easy to hate, but harder to love, nay? Y'all don't understand, some y'all quickly to judge me. Put your foot in my life, picture you live in my life, picture you're holding a cell, picture them hating your life, picture being in charge, picture beating the odds. Naruto closed his eyes, allowing tears of blood to spill as he willed them down before he continued while walking to the center of stage. Picture you willing to bleed, picture you wearing my scars. He lifted his shirt slightly to show his stomach and flared his chakra, allowing the seal to show and making the headmaster blink before narrowing his eyes while several girls squealed. The newspaper club being a part of it. Some guys in the club seethed quietly while others ignored it, figuring he was just going for more points to the judges. The Monstars, grouped together in the back, all chuckled. Mac taking a sip of the coke in his hands. Fucking show off, he jokingly grumbled with a smile on his face. Naruto locked eyes with Sky, giving her a small smile before he continued as he crouched in effort to get close and bowed his head as the lights dimmed slightly. Thank you for making me struggle. Thank you for making me grind. You helped perfected my hustle, telling me the world ain't mine. Naruto stood and looked over the crowd as his clones continued to beatbox. The blonde held his right hand out while switching his mic to his left hand. You been seeing me lately? I am a miracle baby. I refuse to lose. This what the village done made me. I put that on my father. Try and ta hope for tomorrow, when I think that I can't. I envision Jiraiya. A clone stepped back and hanged into a pillar while two other clones jumped onto it and did a combined henge, forming the sage in his usual introduction speech while standing atop the toad. The blonde turned and gave a quick salute to the statue as the rest of the clones stepped forward. Naruto turned and continued. I envision the diamonds, I envision no armies, if the world was perfect. All my friends behind me. All my friends behind me. Aren't you happy I made it? That I am making a statement? Take a look, bitch. You can tell I am destined for greatness. Naruto threw his arms out as two clones used henge, one jumping behind the statue of Jiraiya and becoming the Hokage monument with his face on it in a serious stare while being next to Tsunade's. The other hanged into the cage robes, his hands behind his back. Tell me what do y'all see, when you're looking at me? The blonde asked, running his open hand over his face as he sang the chorus, on a mission to be What I am destined to be. Oh. I done been through the pain and the sorrow. I live only to love. I am a soldier, a fighter, a hardened survivor. Shit, I am all the above. All the above, oh, all the above, oh, all the above, all the above, oh, all the above, yee-yaw. Naruto hopped down from the stage to the floor just in front of the judge's table and hopped onto that. Startling Mr. Inoue and Jin, while the headmaster chuckled and wrote on his scoreboard while Sky shook her head and did the same. The blonde ignored the judges as he continued. Now if ya come to the spot all the way from the dock, I hustle hard cause it's all the same, they know, and you know that I ain't goin' stop, cause when I get to the top, and everyon'll know my name. They'll know. Naruto leapt back to the stage before turning around and the lights dimmed again as his tomos spun slowly, still fightin', still hustling, no more pain, no more sufferin'. Naruto ran his hand through the air in a final swipe motion to emphasize his goal of ending suffering before he pointed to his friends in the newspaper club and his Monstars brethren. To my ladies and my shorties and my thugs. Oh. Start dancing and bath in my love. All the above, oh, all the above, oh, all the above, all the above, oh, all the above, yeah. Naruto dismissed all of his clones, including the hanged ones, before dimming the lights and having a spotlight shine down on himself. The blonde took a small breath before continuing softly, all the above, oh, all the above, all the above, all the above. As he finished he dropped his arms and looked out to the crowd. The audience stood and cheered wildly, clapping, whistling, shouting profanity in approval. A pair of panties shot onto the blonde's face, making him turn a bright shade of red before chuckling and throwing them to the side. The judges stood and clapped, to which he bowed and nodded his head thankfully. Naruto panted slightly while out of breath and said, I'd like to thank Blitz and Sky for their help in this, my friends in the newspaper club for their support, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming and not checking under your seats, yane. The moment he said that, he vanished in a swirl of leaves before a loud fart echoed in the auditorium and a nasty smell overcame the room. Several people cried out in dismay while the Monstars laughed and coughed. The newspaper club were whisked away by several swirls of leaves, as were the Monstars and Sky. The headmaster coughed and rubbed his eyes furiously. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.